I don't know if it's my laptop or what. I'm trying to move this. No, that's gonna pick up on your tapping and stuff. Look at the stuff in it. Because I have nothing open here.
That experience is a very good teacher because it became such a simple process. That is what is not. And again, it proved to me that experience is very good teacher because it became such
Thank you, sir. It's still, yeah. My browser's fine. Thank you.
And something interns that wrote that particular exam, and I'm told that the highest got 88% and the lowest person got 37%. And I'm throwing these numbers so that you can begin to plug yourself. Where are you in terms of your preparation? Are you on a 37% or are you getting to my 88%? I'm also told that by the moderators that the average pass mark for that particular exam was 71%, which clearly indicate that majority of the people did pass this particular exam. I'm saying all these things because this is one of the biggest milestone for you to jump for the year. There's still more to come. I know you are expected to also look at your CPD, but the big one is when we get to the end of the year. And unfortunately, while we have engaged yourself to say prepare, and we end up on the last minute trying to cover the work that we've never really done in the year. And it becomes very difficult. And then we are on that 37% WhatsApp group. The problem then becomes your CSP placement. And I'll say this because with the stakeholders meeting, with the Department of Health, we go through this process day in, day out about the placement for CSP, where we have interns that have not passed the exam. These interns are very much experienced in terms of preparing for the exam. They have written many exams. This one, I am looking at it as is one of those exams where you're now experienced as to how to prepare, what is expected. You've been in the facility for 6 months, and that's the reason why we're saying you may only write after you have completed or you're on your 6 months. Purely because we are thinking and we have proved that you would have gathered adequate experience for you to face this exam and give us that. I'm not saying you must get 88%, but I'm saying if the average is 71%, we are expecting majority of yourself to be around those numbers. And I have to say this because it becomes a war. And my email, they just start increasing because now interns are frustrated because they didn't do well in the exam. Now there must be the special exam that must come from nowhere. Or by the time those last minute exams are written, the space for community service is full. We still have interns from last year that have not been placed for community service because they missed the boat. I'm hoping I'm speaking to the converted, and I'm hoping that all of you have worked very hard in these 5 months, that even when we go to the practice exam, it's going to be a walk in the park. The reason why we write this exam is not to make your life difficult, but just to prepare yourself for the world or for the members of the public, that what they're expecting from yourself and from us. With those few words, I'm hoping that you have heard me, and I'm hoping that there would not be a 37%. I am hoping that we will get 100% pass rate, and everyone will swiftly get themselves ready for community service. Of course, with completing the few CPDs that are still remaining. As a parent, I'm sure it will really break my heart if my children have to write these exams once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. And I have a meeting for the competency framework review, but I decided, Kamu, I'm just going to take the first 10 minutes because it really makes me sad when I look at those results and we still have interns that are struggling with this particular exam. The same way that we have prepared for the past 4 years, 5, maybe 6, some of us. Let's put our head together and make sure that we do this right. I know in the team there are those that struggle, maybe they are writing for the second and the third time. Please, please, and I'm begging you, I am begging you. If it means that you take leave, it means that you deny yourself the Saturday, I'm sure God will understand. If on Sunday you take the afternoon and you open this book, engage your RP, engage your tutors, the pharmacists that you work with, and make sure you are fully prepared for this exam. Because this is the only way that Pharmacy Council is assured that while you assume your responsibility as community service pharmacist and as pharmacist, you will be ready. With those few words, I would like to encourage you that if you have not started, you have already missed a lot. So from tonight, actually, immediately after this, let's start preparing for this exam. It is doable. There's a 71% on the table up for grab. I'm sure we can do it. Again, CPD. We want to get to a point where we get to October and interns are ready. Interns are ready for placement. Let it be us in the department that are failing you in terms of making sure that positions are available up for you to assume your responsibility. It shouldn't be that I get an email about some CPDs that are pending, the fact that you didn't do well on your exam, when is the next exam, and all those things. I am really appealing to all of you. Let us prepare for this exam. It is doable. Believe you me, as the Office of the Registrar, we look forward to a 100% pass. That's what we always put our head together. We would want to see that 100%, and we know it is doable. With those few words, good luck. I hope you will learn a lot from where you are in the midst of the examiners and the moderators in the office. They will be able to assist you fully how to prepare for this exam. We have seen some unbecoming behaviors which are of concern to us. And just to share 2 sentences on those unbecoming behavior, I think the board was very lenient because it was the first time. that such behavior were emerging. I can promise you, if such behaviors are emerging again in 2023 and any of the interns is found copying, I promise you a 5-year sentence of non-practicing is on the table. That is what is being debated at council. If you are found to be conducting yourself unprofessionally during this exam, it is a concern for the board that that's exactly the kind of pharmacies that we don't want in this country. And you might be suspended for 5 years. You write that intern exam on the 6th year. Good luck. Let me take too much of your time. And I hope to hear only good news when your results are released. I will talk to you again as we prepare for the CSP placement, which will be toward the end of the year. And I'm hoping at the time we'll all be smiling because we'll be ready for the placement. Kamu, good luck, and the team, examiners, moderators, the office, good luck and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Messi Memukwena. Thank you for the welcome message and the motivation. I think what we take from the presentation of Memukwena is to plug yourself. Good morning, colleagues. I'm referring to you as colleagues because in 12 months' time or less than that, you will be in your CSP and you will not be interns anymore. So my name is Khotsuko Maloka, and I'm going to be taking you through our presenters for today. You are so much privileged, colleagues, because you've got 2 moderators and an examiner. We normally have 1 moderator and examiner. So you've got all the support, as Memukwena has already mentioned, in terms of experience being a good teacher. We've got Prof. J. Steenekamp, who's a very well experienced pre-reg moderator, and he will be taking you through the calculation section of the pre-registration examination paper. We've got Miss Anna-Marie Augustine. She is our pre-reg examiner, and she will also be taking you through the general section of the paper of the pre-reg exam. We've got our well experienced as well pre-reg exam moderator, Dr. Deanne Johnston. Many of the interns have worked so much with. If you are in your 2nd year, if you're an academic intern, you may have rubbed shoulders with Dr. Deanne Johnston, who used to be part of the SPC. Now she's a facilitator, she's a moderator, and she'll be taking you through the presentation as well as what is expected of you as an intern in terms of logging on the platform and the dates that are coming in terms of the exam and the CPD submission. So we also have from the office Ms. K. Malaku, that's Ms. Kamohelo Malaku. She's a senior manager in the pre-reg exam. You have heard her voice. That was the first opening voice when she welcomed all of us into this workshop. And I am Mr. K. Maloka, and that's Mr. Khotsuko Maloka. We always have the surnames mixed up, even in the office. So it's Malaku and Maloka. So I'm sometimes called Mr. Malaku and vice versa. So I hope we all get, if you can't get away, you can just say kg for kilogram. So you can get away with that name as well. So you'll be interacting a lot with myself and Ms. Malaku as well throughout. We'll be assisting you with your journey in the internship period. So when we look at what is the next slide at the end, when we look at what is the format of our exam, we do note and acknowledge, we have also written this in the intern tutor manual, that this is a pre-registration examination, and South Africa is not the first country that has a pre-registration examination. Australia, Canada, UK, you name them, Nigeria, Zambia, all of the pharmacy, most of the pharmacy councils do have their pre-reg exam, just they would call them in different names. But at the end of the day, an intern will sit for an exam that will make them to qualify to be a pharmacist. So in South Africa, we've got about 120 of the multiple choice question, and it is split over 2 days. We normally start with the calculation. which is on the first day. And then on the second day, we continue with the general section. And all of these are MCQs. Calculation section is written for 2 hours. And there is a sub minimum of 60%. You need to attain 60% in order for you to be deemed competent in this section of the paper. And if you're writing the general section, you need to at least attain 50% of the sub minimum. Overall, you need to, of course, make sure that all of the papers you do attain all the sub minimums that are mentioned here. And the general section is written for 2 hours and 30 minutes. And you need to write both sections of the examination. So we also need to remember that the practice pre-reg exam is compulsory for those who are writing the pre-reg exam. And that also gives you an idea of how the exam is set and the question, how the questions are displayed. It gives you that mock paper in order for you to get ready for the actual paper. It's very important to take part in the practice pre-reg exam. Of course, the scheduled, and Dr. Johnson will talk to this, will be on the 1st of June. So in terms of our split, we've got questions that will be coming from the community side and institutional as well as manufacturing. So questions are related to community, as I said, and institutional and manufacturing sectors. And we need to, we have seen the change in terms of the pre-reg exam paper, where it was sector specific, but now all interns are to complete all questions. It is not sector specific as it used to be in the past. So you need to make sure that if it's a community question, you attend to that. If it's an institutional question, you attend to that. If it's a manufacturing question, you also attend to that question as well. And you refer to domains and competency standards, which one needs to consider, which are related to a certain or specific sector. And this is what governs us as pharmacists as we're practicing as well, all the domains and competency standards. And I'm going to hand over to Prof. Steenekamp. He's going to be taking us through what the examination is based on. That is the calculation section of this paper. Prof. Steenekamp, over to you.
Thank you, KG. Appreciate it. Just from my side, a word of welcome to the interns. And before I start with the slides, the general approach for the calculation section, and what I hope this session today will do, is highlight an approach, steps that you can take to increase your success for the calculation part of the paper. So with that being said, let's start. First question that you can ask yourself is, what is this examination based on? And it's based on the 2018 competency standards for pharmacists that was published. And you will see that the competency standards is located in 6 domains. And if you take a look at the left of the slide, you will see there's an pie chart with an allocation of the percentage of questions that will be allocated to each of these domains. Next slide, please. In terms of the calculations, we work with a blueprint that states what type of questions to a particular domain we ask. And once again, there's a pie chart, and I would like to focus your attention especially to domain 2 and 3. You will see that approximately 80% of the paper will be from these 2 domains. So when you prep, make sure that you focus on these 2 domains to ensure that you know how to answer these type of questions. You will also see that not all the domains are covered within the calculation section. And that's just due to the fact that certain questions or certain domains are more difficult to ask calculation type of questions on. For instance, for the domain 2 and 3, it's much easier to ask questions on those domains, and they are more practice related and more frequently encountered in the practice. So that's why we see a lot of these type of questions in the paper. Next slide, please. If we take a look at the different competency standards, you will see on this slide and the next slide as well, there's a allocation of what type of question you can expect belonging to a certain competency standard. I'm going to take one, for example. If we take a look at competency standard 2.4, for instance, which is medicines and medical device safety, what type of calculations can you expect? For instance, you can calculate an appropriate dose, prepare, concentrate, or dilute compounded medicines accurately. So this is the type of questions that you can expect. It's not saying that you will get a question on each of these. You will see there's a lot of them, but it's just an allocation so that you can be aware, how should I prepare? What can I expect? So when you prepare for the exam, please take a look at these identifiers to see what you can expect and make sure that you are fairly comfortable with these type of questions. Next slide. Okay, similar to the previous slide, and I have referred to this one, just for competency standard 3 and 4, you will see what type of questions you can expect belonging to these competency standards. Next one. That brings us to the preparation for your exam and the resources that you should use. In terms of textbooks, we can recommend the two that's on the slide, with the one on the right hand. Pharmaceutical calculations, I think the more thorough one of the two. So when you prepare for the exam, consult this textbook. If you have it, I'm not sure if there's online versions available. I believe there are. It might not be the newest one, but all the versions will also do. The principles remain the same. Just a word of caution on these textbooks. There's nothing wrong with these textbooks. However, the value of a textbook lies in the prep work before the exam. So you should use the textbook, take a look at the calculations, practice them. Bringing the textbook to the exam setting, although it's an open book exam, will be of limited value. You won't have enough time to look up every calculation in the book and see what to do. So use your textbooks when you prepare beforehand for the exam. You can bring it to the exam venue if you want to quickly take a look at an equation maybe, but don't bring it to the exam venue to look up everything. There won't be enough time. If you're going to spend a lot of time in your textbook in the exam setting, you're going to waste your time and you will not be able to finish the exam in time. Next slide, please. General tips on calculations and a bit of advice. The first thing with calculations, you need to understand the principle and not memorize the calculation. For instance, let's take a dilution. If you get a calculation and in the exam setting, identify the type of calculation and then use the principle. There's a lot of calculations. You will not be able to memorize any type of calculation while you prepare. Rather, understand the principle, then you will be able to practice and do the calculation within the exam setting. Hand in hand with understanding the principle is you need to know your units. For instance, let's take example percentage weight per volume. You need to know that percentage weight per volume means the number of grams of solute per 100 mils of solution. That goes for all your concentration expressions. You need to understand them. You need to know what they stand for. And in terms of equations, there are a few equations that are applicable to this exam. For instance, on the slide, you will see the very well-known C1V1 equals C2V2. Taking that this is an open book exam, I would advise interns to make a sheet with all the equations that you think you're going to use. If you are fond of equations and want to use them and don't know all your equations by heart, you are more than welcome to bring a sheet with all your equations on it. But once again, just a word of caution on equations. If you bring a sheet with equations into the exam venue, you need to know when to use the equation, what type of calculations are applicable to a particular equation. If you don't know what the units in an equation stand for instance, in C1V1, C1 stands for concentration 1 and V1 stands for volume 1. If you don't know what the symbols mean, a sheet with the equations are not of value. So understand the equation, know what it stands for, and know how to apply it. Then you are going to use a calculator. And if you use a calculator, please bring the same one to the exam setting that you were using when you practiced for the exam. And although the chances of a calculator dying you are very slim, please make sure that your batteries of your calculator are going to withstand through the exam. If you're not sure, if you have maybe a dim screen on the calculator that might be due to poor batteries, please replace the batteries before you enter the exam venue or wherever you write the exam. There's nothing worse than in an exam venue when your calculator dies on you. So please make sure that your equipment, that meaning the calculator, is working and that you have enough pens and paper to do your calculations. So in other words, please come prepared to the setting. Next slide, please. 2 more tips. In all the years that I've been involved with the pre-reach exam, more than once we have seen that conversion seems to be an issue for some interns. So if you do know that you do struggle with conversions, bring a conversion sheet to the exam venue. On this slide, there's a typical example. Now, this conversion sheet is for weights. If you take a look on the left-hand side, we start with micrograms, then go to milligrams, then goes to grams, and then go to kilograms. So if you need to convert from micrograms to milligrams, you follow the gray arrows. That will be, you take your microgram number, you divide it by 1,000, and that will give you the milligram answer. Similar for conversion of milligrams to grams, you divide by 1,000, and the same for conversion of grams to kilograms. If you go the opposite direction, let's say you have a kilogram number, you want to convert to grams, you follow the yellow arrows. So to convert kilograms to grams, you multiply by 1,000. Similar for conversion of grams to milligrams and milligrams to micrograms, you convert by multiplying with 1,000. Now, for volumes, we can do exactly the same. And you will see on the next slide a very similar diagram with conversions from microliters to milliliters to liters to kiloliters. You follow the gray arrows. And if you want to convert from kiloliters to liters to milliliters to microliters, you follow the yellow arrows. So if you know that you do experience issues with conversions, please bring a conversion chart to the exam setting, because remember, we only mark the answer. your steps can be all in order, but your answer is wrong, then you won't be awarded your mark. So please make sure that the areas where you do struggle, that you practice those areas and bring material that will help you in your weak areas when you write the exam. Next slide, please. When you're in the exam and you have all your equipment that you will need, let's take a look at a technique. There is a general technique that we can apply, and it is summarized on this slide. So let's quickly take a look on what's written on this slide. I think the first thing is when you're in the exam and you start with your calculations, first off, when you have a calculation, identify the type of calculation. For instance, if it's a dilution calculation, identify the formula if it's applicable. Similarly, if it is a milli-equivalent calculation, identify it as such and know what formulas are applicable to that calculation. Can we quickly go back to the previous slide there? Well, in the exam, do your rough work systematically so that when you transcribe back to your answer sheet, that you lessen your chances of making mistakes. Another helpful tip is when you are going to calculate, for instance, a dose, try to estimate your answer. Remember, the calculations that we ask in the paper are reasonable. So your answers will be reasonable answers. If you get a way out answer, like let's say a liter for a single dose, you must know that it is not correct. Another thing that you also can do is double check your calculations to ensure that you did not make a mistake with your calculator. Next slide, please. Very important. You have 40 MCQs related to calculations. You have an allocated 2 hours to answer these calculations. That amounts to 3 minutes per calculation or 3 minutes per question. Okay. Remember, this is an average. Some calculations you might take a bit longer, and that's fine. Certain calculations will take shorter time. On average, you have 3 minutes maximum for a calculation. So be mindful of your time, do manage it, and important, there's no negative marking. So do not leave anything blank. If you don't know an answer, you are welcome to guess. Just don't guess all 40 of them. The chances of guessing 40 questions correct is almost impossible. Next slide. Okay, interns, this brings us to typical examples. On the first example, and what I'm going to do, I want to teach you approach. So let's start off with reading the calculation. A 55-year-old male patient is stabilized on warfarin 5 milligram daily at a cost of 28 Rand 80 per month. The patient has his INR monitored weekly at a cost of 170 Rand 70 per test. The patient has heard about rivaroxaban from his doctor and wants to know the cost implications. Thank you. The cost of rivaroxaban is 50 milligram daily is 637 Rand 95 per month. What is the difference in cost between these two options? Okay, when you read a calculation, try, after you've read it, put it in your own words. Try to understand what is asked. If we take this example, we have two different treatments, warfarin and rivaroxaban, and the question is actually, what is the cost difference between the two options? So let's go to the memo for this calculation. First off, with warfarin, there is two components to the total cost. The first one is the warfarin tablets itself, which is 28 Rand 80 per month. Then there's weekly tests. There's 4 weeks in a month. So it's 170 Rand 70 multiplied by 4. That gives you 470 Rand 80. So the total cost for the warfarin treatment will then be 470 Rand 80 plus 28 Rand 80. That gives you 499 Rand 60. In contrast to this, rivaroxaban is only for the medicine. So that will be 637.95. So the difference in cost is 637.95 minus 499.60 gives you a cost difference of 138 Rand 35. So the rivaroxaban treatment is going to cost about 139 Rands more per month. Okay, next example. Once again, example 2, let's start reading it. A patient requires an intravenous infusion of 0.9% weight per volume sodium chloride. In your hospital pharmacy department, you have water for injection BP and 4.5% weight per volume sodium chloride solution BP. Assuming no volume displacement effects, what volume of the 4.5% weight per volume sodium chloride solution BP needs to be added aseptically to an expandable PVC infusion bag containing 100 ml of water for injection BP to produce the required sodium chloride concentration? Okay, once again, let's put the question or the scenario in our own words. We have a request for 0.9% weight per volume sodium chloride. We don't have it at hand. What we have is 100 ml of water for injection and a sodium chloride solution with a strength of 4.5% weight per volume. So they want us to calculate the volume of 4.5% weight per volume sodium chloride that needs to be added to 100 ml of water for injection to obtain 0.9% weight per volume sodium chloride. Okay, let's take a look at the memo. Okay, in this calculation, you will see that it is approached using alligation. Alligation, the first thing that you need to know is, when can I use or apply alligation as a method to solve a calculation? And there's one thing that you need to identify. There will always be 3 strengths involved in the calculation, and it will be related to the same active ingredient. In this case, sodium chloride. The first 2 is easy, 0.9%. That's the one that you need to prepare, always written in the middle. To the left-hand side of the 0.9%, you will see there's a 4.5% strength. That's the strength that we need to use. And then suddenly there appears a 0% sodium chloride strength. Now the question is, where does that 0% come from? And that refers to the water for injection. Remember, the active ingredient concerned here is sodium chloride. Water for injection doesn't contain any sodium chloride. Therefore, we assign a 0% strength to that. So if you identified your strengths and you've written it as written on this slide, remember, the strength that you require is always written in the middle, the 0.9%. The strength that you need to use to get to the required one, always written on the left. Doesn't matter which one is on the top and which one is on the bottom. Can go either way. So now what you do subtraction. First one we're going to do is 4.5 minus 0.9. That will give you 3.6. Similarly, 0.9 minus 0 gives you 0.9, and we work with the absolute values. Very important when you do an allegation question. Your answers of the subtraction is always in parts, always. So how do we interpret it now? We do it as follows. It means you're going to need 3.6 parts of your 0% strength. That will be your water for injection. And you're going to use 0.9 parts of the 4.5% strength. Somehow we need to convert the parts now to a volume. And the only volume that was given in that scenario was 100 milliliters. And the 100 milliliters was the water for injection that we have. So the 3.6 parts you can equate to 100 milliliters. Therefore, if 3.6 parts is equal to 100 mils, you can do a proportion calculation. Therefore, 0.9 parts will be what volume? And then if you do the calculation, you will get an answer of 25 milliliters. So to summarize, if you take 25 milliliters, which represents 0.9 parts of the 4.5% weight per volume sodium solution, and you add it to 100 mils of water for injection, you will get a total volume of 125 mils, and the strength of that 125 mils will be 0.9% weight per volume in terms of sodium chloride. Maybe I should ask here that we can do the question, if there's questions on any of the calculations, that we do it at the end. There's a question and answer section that we can do there. Okay, next slide, please. Example number 3. Given that the relative molecular mass of sodium chloride is 58.5 grams per mole, what amount of sodium chloride powder is required to prepare 300 moles of a solution containing 50 millimoles per liter? Right, we can go to the memo. First thing that you need to know is this question centers around millimoles. You need to know what a millimole is, so you need to know a definition. If you don't know what a millimole is, then you won't be able to do this calculation. So 1 millimole, or let's say in 1 mole of a substance, and a mole of sodium chloride weighs 58.5 grams. In 1 mole, there will be 1,000 millimoles. That implies that 1 millimole of a substance will be equivalent to the number of the molecular weights, which is 58.5, but expressed in milligrams. So for sodium chloride, 1 millimole of sodium chloride will weigh 58.5 milligrams. Okay, that's the first thing. If you identified what one millimole weighs, you can proceed to the next step. Remember, in this calculation, we work with 50 millimoles. So ordinary proportion, if 1 millimole is 58.5 milligrams, therefore 50 millimoles will be how many milligrams? That will be 2,925 milligrams. But remember, if you add this 2,925 milligrams to a liter, you will be having a 50 millimole per liter solution. Once again, do we need to prepare a liter? No. If you take a look at a scenario, they ask for 300 milliliters. So if 2,925 milligrams dissolved in a liter of solution will represent 50 millimoles, then for 300 moles, how many milligrams do we need to weigh? And that is 877.5 milligrams. Next question. Okay, this one we need to spend a little bit of time on. Whenever you get a calculation that centers around tonicity, these calculations are normally experienced by more difficult by the interns, and it has to do with the fact that it's a calculation less frequently encountered. The fact that it's less frequently encountered doesn't mean that you don't need to do it. You have to be able to do these calculations. And it's fairly easy if you know how to approach this calculation. So let's start with reading the calculation. A pharmacist receives the following prescription: ephedrine hydrochloride 0.5 grams, chlorobutanol 0.25 grams, dextrose anhydrous QS, purified water AD 50 mils. The question asks, how many grams of anhydrous dextrose should be used in compounded prescription to make an isotonic solution? And then at the bottom of this scenario, there's information given. The sodium chloride equivalent of a 1% weight per volume solution of ephedrine hydrochloride is 0.3, and for a 1% weight per volume solution of chlorobutanol is 0.24, and for a 1% solution of anhydrous dextrose is 0.18. Okay. Before we take a look at the memo, it's important that you identify the method that we're going to use here. Because sodium chloride equivalents are given, you need to know that this is a sodium chloride equivalent calculation concerning isotonicity. So we're going to convert all the ingredients in that formula to sodium chloride equivalents. Now we can take a look at the memo. Okay, let's start with the ephedrine. The equivalent for sodium chloride for ephedrine is 1 gram of ephedrine is equivalent to 0.3 grams. In our recipe or formula, we have only 0.5 grams of ephedrine, so that will be equivalent to 0.15 grams of sodium chloride. Similarly, for chlorobutanol, we have 0.25 grams of chlorobutanol in that formula. That will be equivalent to 0.06 grams of sodium chloride. So the total sodium chloride equivalent in that formula is 0.21 grams. And the 0.21 grams we get by adding 0.15 grams of sodium chloride to 0.063 grams of sodium chloride. That gives you 0.21 grams of sodium chloride. Now, the next question that you need to ask yourself is 0.21 grams of sodium chloride enough to render it isotonic? That you need to find out. And the way we find this out is by definition. We know that an isotonic solution of sodium chloride contains 0.9 grams of sodium chloride per 100 mils. That will be equivalent to 0.45 grams of sodium chloride per 50 mils. Now, why do we work with 50 mils? That is the volume of the formula that we are working with. So if we had 0.45 grams of sodium chloride in that 50 mils, it would have been isotonic. But we only have 0.21 grams. So we still need, in theory, about 0.24 grams of sodium chloride. But we're not going to make this product isotonic with sodium chloride. They ask us to use anhydrous dextrose. Once again, you need to calculate the equivalent. In information given, they said the sodium equivalent for anhydrous dextrose is 0.1 gram. This means that 1 gram of anhydrous dextrose is equivalent to 0.18 grams of sodium chloride. Therefore, we need the equivalent amount of anhydrous dextrose that is equivalent to 0.24 grams of sodium chloride. And if we do the calculation, we get to an answer of 1.33 grams of anhydrous dextrose. This means if you prepare this product, you need to add 1.33 grams of anhydrous dextrose, and the final volume will then be 50 mils. Then this product will be isotonic. So this is a brief, in general, the approach that you use when you do a sodium chloride equivalent calculation for isotonicity. Next slide. In example number 5, calculate the quantity of sodium chloride that should be added to 150 mils of a 1% weight per volume solution of apomorphine hydrochloride to render the solution isotonic with blood plasma. The freezing point depression of a 1% weight per volume solution of the drug and sodium chloride is 0.08 and 0.58 degrees Celsius respectively. Before we take a look at the memo, this is also a tonicity calculation. However, a different method is going to be used. If you remember in the previous one, we used the sodium chloride equivalent approach. In this one, we're going to use the freezing point depression method. Okay, can we advance to the memo, please? In this calculation, now, this is an example of a calculation where a formula is applicable. So on your formula sheet, you can write the following formula. W equals 0.52 minus A divided by B. Whenever you get a freezing point depression calculation, this is the formula that is applicable. But to use this formula, you need to know what the symbols stand for. Let's start off with the W. The W stands for the quantity of adjusting substance that needs to be added to render the product isotonic, and it's expressed in percentage weight per volume or grams per 100 mol. The A stands for the freezing point depression of the solution at hand, and the B stands for the freezing point depression value of the adjusting substance. And remember, these values will be for 1% weight per volume solutions. Right, so if we substitute the values, you will get W equals minus 0.52 minus 0.08 divided by 0.58. Then you get an answer of 0.758% weight per volume. This means that I need to add 0.58 grams of sodium chloride to each 100 moles of solution to render it isotonic. Now, in this scenario, we need to prepare 150 moles of this product. So you need to calculate a quantity of sodium chloride to be added. We know that we need to add 0.758 grams of sodium chloride to each 100 moles. So for 150 moles, how much sodium chloride do I need? That is 1.137 grams of sodium chloride. As easy as that. This type of calculation is a bit shorter than the previous one, but if you know the general approach and know what approach to use, these calculations are not difficult. It centers around you identifying what approach to use. Next slide, please. In this example, how many milliequivalents of potassium ion are there in a 250 milligram penicillin V potassium tablet? Note, molecular weight of penicillin V is 388.48. There is 1 potassium ion in the molecule and the valence of potassium is 1. Okay, now we can go to the memo. Before I start handling the memo on this example, depending on the textbook that you consult, there are different equations that you can use to do milliequivalent calculations. The approach on this slide is what I normally use, and it works every time. But you need to know what we are calculating. Whenever you encounter a milliequivalent calculation, you need to calculate two values. The first value is the number of milliequivalents per millimole. And the formula applicable here is milliequivalents per millimole equals valence multiplied by number. Okay, what valence are we referring to? You can either use the valence of the positive group or the negative group or molecule in the scenario. In this case, we work with potassium, and the valence of potassium is +1. You work with the absolute value, that is 1. The number refers to the number of that specific ion in one molecule of the substance at hand. We are working with penicillin V, and each molecule of penicillin V contains 1 potassium ion. So to calculate the number of milliequivalents per millimole, it's 1 multiplied by 1. So the answer is 1 milliequivalent per millimole. The next value that you need to calculate is the equivalent weight. Now, the formula applicable to calculate the equivalent weight is as follows. It's your molecular weight that you express in milligrams per millimole divided by milliequivalents per millimole. And remember, we've just calculated the milliequivalents per millimole. So the first value that you calculated, you are going to use to calculate your second value. To calculate the equivalent weight in this case, we take the molecular weight, which is 388.48. We express it in milligrams per millimole, and we divide it by the number of milliequivalents per millimole, which is 1. And then you get an equivalent weight of 388.48 milligrams per milliequivalent. Okay, you need to know what this means. The equivalent means as follows. If I take 388.48 milligrams of pen V, I have 1 milliequivalent. Now the question is, how many milliequivalents are there in one tablet? Each tablet contains 250 milligrams of pen V. So if 1 milliequivalent is equivalent to 388.48 milligrams, how many milliequivalents will 250 milligram represent? And then you will get an answer of 0.44 milliequivalents of potassium. So each tablet of pen V is equivalent to 0.644 milliequivalents of potassium. All right. Next slide. I think that is the last example.
Thanks, Prof. Yes. So if there are any questions, maybe Natalie can confirm with us if there's any questions in the chat.
Thanks, Deanne. There's nothing at the moment. Let's just give the attendees a moment to type if they want to.
So interns, if you have any questions for Prof. Steenekamp on the calculation questions, now's the time to ask so that he can go through those examples again if there's anything that you may have missed. Okay, so it doesn't seem like there are any questions coming through. So if you would like to ask anything, and it comes to you during the next section of the exam, Prof, I just want to check if you're staying with us for the next part of the presentation.
I will be here.
Okay, great. So if interns have any questions, they can please send it at any time in the chat, and then we'll take note of those questions and they'll be addressed later in the presentation. So now what we are heading towards is we're now moving towards our break. So we're going to be taking a 10-minute break. So it's currently 10:02. So we'll be starting at 12 minutes past 10. While you are on your break, there is a link that is going to be published in the chat. So please would you have a look at it and click on it. These questions are what we're going to use to review the general section of the examination. So if you don't mind just taking a look, there are 6 questions. If you don't know the answer, just take a guess, the one that you would most likely choose. So there's 6 questions and it should take you literally a minute just to go through those questions. But there's a 10-minute break and we'll be starting again at 12 minutes past 10. So grab yourself a cup of coffee, but don't forget to come back. See you soon. Welcome back, everyone. So if you haven't yet had a chance, we have posted the link in the chat, and this is a link to a form that we would like you to answer, and it's to review questions that you would see in the general section of the examination. So if you haven't had a chance, please would you complete these questions, and we will be reviewing these shortly. At this point, I'd like to hand over to Ms. Augustine. She is an examiner for the community sector of the examination, and she'll be taking us through the general questions and what we can expect. Thank you, Anna Marie.
Thank you, Deanne. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to carry on where Prof. Steenekamp already mentioned a lot of the structure of the exam. So the general questions is generally similar in structure. And we also use the competency standards for the blueprint to set the exam questions. And if you look at the pie chart there, it gives you an indication of where does the questions come from. And I think you're very familiar with the 6 domains because you're busy with your getting your CPDs done for the year, where you do a CPD in each of the 6 domains. So we can just quickly run through it. If you look at domain 1, public health, there is about 21% of the questions from there. Domain 2, safe and rational use of medicines, 26%. Then supply of medicines and medical devices, 18%, a little bit less in number 4, organizational and management skills, and then about a quarter of the questions from professional and personal practice, domain 5, and lastly, a little bit of questions on education, critical analysis and research. Don't spend too much time on where does the questions come from. Spend more time on preparing for to get your mindset right for answering the questions. Okay, let's look next at the references that you can use for the questions. Okay, so if we look at which references, it's an open book exam, so you can take in any references that you may think that can help you. The danger in this is that you don't take in any reference, only take in references that you have used before. And when you sit for the practice exam, see which references you use, and the references you don't use, don't even take it in, and don't use any references that you haven't that you don't know what the content of it is. So if we look at that, reference the SAMF. So look at the recent SAMF that you may take in, and that can be beneficial. But if you see the SAMF, make sure that you familiarize yourself with the content of the SAMF. What type of question will I take my SAMF to find the answer? Look at also information in the beginning of the textbook, at the end of the textbook, make sure you understand the indexes, etc. MIMS MDR is another textbook that you may find that can help you. Then the essential medicine list, standard treatment guidelines for PHC, pediatric and hospital. Your GPP manual, and all the associated rules. We saw that about a quarter of the paper comes from professional and ethical practice, so where your GPP can assist you and your acts. Your guide to GMP, good manufacturing practice, and then the Pharmacy Act and the Medicines Act, the 2 acts that we mostly use in pharmacies. And there on the right-hand side in the block, is it current? That is very important, that if you look at a reference, that it must be something that is current. If you look in a SAMF from 10 years ago, the information in there might be wrong. So at that stage, it was current information, but since then things changed, or protocols changed, or the medicine may have been taken off the market, etc. So make sure that your references are current. Thank you. Next slide. Okay. So this is if you go to Pharmacy Council website, spend an evening going through council website. I'm sure at this stage you've done it. You've downloaded your manual as it's indicated there, and then your other important documents there, your GPPs there, your GMP is there, your EML is there, hospital level, primary care level, pediatrics, and then your national drug policy is also there. So those are all information that is available for download. But make sure that you do that before the time. This is not something that on the day of the exam you think, oh, they said it can be downloaded. So look at it now. Thank you. Next slide. Right, so still on Pharmacy Council website, if you go to the 5 circles at the top before you log in, you see the book in the middle, and if you click on the book, it takes you to legislation, to the pharmacia, and next one, if you go into those tabs, you'll see that it will give you the Act, the Pharmacy Act, the consolidated version of the Act that you can use, and then it gives you the regulations there. And go through each of the bullets there so that you see, read through what is there, what information, because when you get a question, then you'll be reminded of, I found it there and I can go back and find it there. And then on the next one, it will take you to the next slide. Further to the Act, and you can see all the rules there. Go through all the rules. There are some of the board notices, and then on the next slide, you'll find the rest of the board notices, and go through all of those board notices to make sure that you familiarize yourself with what is in the board notice. And then you'll see that your everything is there with regards to what was published with from Pharmacy Council side. Thank you. Next slide. Okay. So how will I then use my reference material? First of all, as I've said before, make sure that if you use a book, that you've used the book before many times. So from now to exam date, make sure that the books that you identified, you have used them. You have set yourself a question, ask somebody in the pharmacy to ask you something, and see to which book will you go to find the answer. And sometimes even if you know the answer, think, if I didn't know this answer, where would I find it? And a good guide is to look at the required textbooks that must be in every pharmacy. Those textbooks are the textbooks that we use during our practice every day. So make sure that you can use the index. Make sure that you can find the answers in the. So you're not expected to learn the content of the SAMF off by heart, but it is important to see what type of information is in the SAMF. If I'm looking for a side effect, where will I find that? If I'm looking for a contraindication, where will I find that, etc. And then very important, more is not necessarily better. The fact that you can take anything, that you can use any reference material, can be confusing if you take in too many books or too many documents. Make sure that you, if you identify a reference book now, and even after the practice exam you haven't used it, the chances that you will use it in the exam is very limited. So rather put it aside and identify the books that you're going to use and study them thoroughly as far as what do they offer. And then just the last one there is your university notes may not be helpful. So just make sure that whatever is in the university notes is still valid before you take university notes in. So we're not saying by that the university taught you something that is not true. It is just if you take in notes from 2020, it might say that you've got to wear a mask at all times in public. And this is no longer valid. So make sure that the information in your notes is still current. Right, if you download something, download the references before the exam, because during the exam you might be a little bit stressed, and you also don't have time to do that during the exam. And information may not correlate to the recommended reference material. Next slide. All right. Other useful online resources that you may find, the EM guidance. You can download the EM essential medicine list from Pharmacy Council website, MSD manual for and SAHPRA website. Also go to the SAHPRA website, see what information is on there that you could use. And then you're not allowed to use a second device for resources. So everything you're going to use will be on the device that you registered for the exam. So everything that you are going to use will be on the specific device. If you're not sure if you could do something, if you could use another app, this or that or the other, rather send an email to council now, find it out before the exam, instead of using it and see what happens. As Ms. Mokoena said in the beginning, it is important that if students are found to use references or to do things that they're not allowed to do, it is quite a serious matter. So make sure that you don't do things that you're not allowed to. Next. All right. Again, here, read the questions carefully. Make sure what is asked. What do they want me to what do they want to achieve with this question? And then it's all multiple choice. So you've got 4 options. So identify firstly the statements of which you are sure, and don't even spend more time on that. And only confirm any statement that you are not sure of. So don't, because you have reference material, and it is now an open book exam, think you have to confirm everything. If you know that simvastatin is used to lower cholesterol, it's not necessary to confirm it with a textbook. If you can't complete the question, carry on, and then when you have time towards the end, you can come back to it. Once you've answered the question, you won't be able to come back, but if you've read the question and didn't answer it, you can go back. And then important, if you read the question, look for words like true, is, correct, false, not. We're not using false, not, incorrect anymore. And look at for very important, most appropriate. Most appropriate implies that there are more than one question or answer that is possible, but you have to select the most inclusive answer. And that happens with us in practice every day. Sometimes in practice, we've got a scenario, there are more than one option that we can do, and it doesn't mean that the others are incorrect, but this would be the most appropriate way to do it. And this is, in a practice exam, you'll find that you get many questions where in the question it says, which of the following is the most appropriate? So that then you have to look at the 4 options and take the one that is the most appropriate action to take, which says that the other options are not incorrect, but they're less appropriate. Next slide. Then very important is your time management. The same like with the calculation questions, your practice questions also important. You've got 150 minutes to answer 80 multiple choice questions. You've got 4 options per MCQ. you've got, that gives you less than 2 minutes per question. So when you now start preparing for the exam, look at a question and time yourself. Time, how long does it take you to answer the question? With this in mind, it is clear that you won't be able to look every question and to reference it and go to a reference and try and find the answer. So answer the questions that you know, put that in the bank, and sort of put some time in the bank to go back to the questions that you find challenging and where you need to reference it or reason it out. Right. There's no negative marking, so don't leave any question blank. As Prof. Stennekamp also said, take a guess then. Sometimes, well, take a calculated guess. Maybe you are sure of 2 of the options. It's just that the other 2 options you're not sure. Then your chances of having the question correct is sort of 50%, because 2 of the statements you are 100% sure that they are not true, or whatever the case might be. So make sure that you also practice how to manage your time, and don't get stuck on a question that you don't know and waste time, and be conscious of the time all the time. There is a timer while you're writing the exam, so don't see it as a threat, but use it to your advantage. Next one.
Thank you, Anna-Marie. At this point, we now have the opportunity to look at those questions and answers. So let me just switch to that screen quickly. When I last checked, we had approximately 109 responses. So if there's anybody who still would like to fill it in, if you could fill it in as soon as possible. Okay, so I'll read out the questions, and then if you could give us feedback on what is the correct answer and how you would get there, please. So let's start with question number 1. A breastfeeding mother inquires whether it is safe to use aspirin. Which of the following reference sources would assist you in determining the safety of this medicine for this patient? A, daily drug use, B, good pharmacy practice, C, British Pharmacopedia, and D, Pharmacy Act 53 of 1974. Majority of the students chose option A. Anna-Marie, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so if you could give us some feedback on question 1, where most of the students chose option A.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so option A is the correct one, and let's look at the question again. A breastfeeding mother inquires whether it's safe to use aspirin. Which of the following references? So there's a statement that says that a mother that is breastfeeding her baby, she wants to know whether she can use a certain medicine. And then you now need to advise her, and which of the following would you then advise her on? So if we look at our daily drug use, that is, again, if you didn't know what is in the daily drug use, this question would have been difficult, or in the GPP or any of the others. So let's take the references from the bottom. The Pharmacy Act gives us, nobody thought it's the Pharmacy Act, because the Pharmacy Act gives us information on how a pharmacy must operate, the registered persons in there, etc., etc. And this is the type of information that you need to make sure that you know by the time the exam you're going to write the exam. So the Pharmacy Act is definitely not an option. The BP is more about recipes, etc. So there we might not find the answer about lactation. And the GPP is also a regulator, tells us about the regulations in a pharmacy. So there we also don't expect to find that information. But in the daily drug use, there is columns that gives you information on whether you can use it in porphyria, and then particularly in breastfeeding as well. So that is the correct answer. So I think what is important, what we learn from this question is that if I don't know what's inside the reference book, I wouldn't know what the answer is. And if you knew by studying before the time what is in your reference books, you didn't even have to reference this book, this question, because the question is not, is it safe to use aspirin, yes or no? The question is, which book are you going to use? Okay, next one.
Thank you so much. So the next question is, a patient presents a prescription for methotrexate for rheumatoid arthritis. Which of the following counseling points are correct? We have quite a mixture of responses here. So the first one was the prescribed dose can be divided across a number of days if they experience side effects. There were 44 that chose this option. The next one, take the medicine on an empty stomach 1 hour or 2 hours after a meal. There were 33 interns that chose this as the correct answer. Immediately stop taking the medication and contact your doctor if hair loss is experienced. 11 interns chose this option. And then 26 says, contact the doctor if exposed to someone with chickenpox or shingles. Over to you.
Okay, so if we look at this question, let's start at the question first. Patient presents with a prescription for methotrexate, and then which of the counseling points? So now you've got to know methotrexate. How are you going to counsel a patient, and which textbook will give you information on that? Let's think about it. You might find it in a pharmacology textbook. Your SAMF will give you information on that. And those would be your most obvious references. So again, go back, and identify the reference to use, and then look at, and then it's just to identify what is in the reference book, and find the correct answer there. Sorry, Deanne, my screen is sort of blank now. What is the correct answer there?
So Anna-Marie, the correct answer, so this is the question about methotrexate.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure of the correct answer.
And I think there's one on empty stomach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it that one over here? So that means that the correct answer would then be option B.
On an empty stomach. There's other options of, there's one about hair loss. So if you think of the way methotrexate is working, then hair loss would be a sort of normal side effect. If you think of the mechanism of action, and methotrexate is better on an empty stomach. And then, sorry, I can't see my screen at the moment.
The next question was about dividing the doses. Then the one was on an empty stomach, and then immediately stop taking the medication if there's hair loss. And then the last one was contact the doctor if exposed to chickenpox or shingles.
Oh yeah, which is also not a reason to stop the medicine. Okay, so shall we carry on to the next question? So it's empty stomach.
Okay, so the next question, quality risk management supports the scientific and practical approach to decision making. Which of the following is true regarding quality risk management? So over here, we had majority of the interns who chose option C, and option C is tools for documented.
I can see again.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Okay, so option C, I think this question is sort of maybe easy because you come from the academic background. Since last year you were students, so I don't know if we need to really discuss anything here. It's quite clear that the majority chose the correct answer.
Okay,
And
so
yeah. So again, here we can maybe just go through the question. Quality risk management supports a scientific and practical approach to decision making. So again, here you need to know what is quality risk management. And if you don't know what quality risk management is, then the question would be difficult. So important that you know what that means. Okay, so then the next
the
question.
next question is question number 4. You receive a prescription for venlafaxine XL 150 milligrams once daily to be repeated for 5 months. The patient requests that you dispense 75 milligram capsules instead of 150 milligram capsules. Which of the following actions would be most appropriate? The first one says dispense 75 milligram capsules as requested by the patient. B, dispense 150 milligram capsules as instructed on the the prescription. C, consult the doctor before dispensing the medication. And the last one, advise the patient to take 150 milligram capsules every second day. The majority here chose option C.
Okay, I think this is one of the examples where it says which of the following actions is most appropriate for you to take. So what happened here is that the prescription says 150 milligram once daily to be repeated for 5 months. So it's repeat script for 6 months. And the patient then wants to reduce the dose. So let's just think of if the patient reduced the dose and goes back to the doctor after 6 months and is either not under control or not or controlled, the doctor doesn't have the clear picture, and he might then either increase or reduce the dose because he's under the impression that the patient is taking 150 milligram capsules. So rightly so, the majority of people chose the most appropriate action, which is consult the doctor before you dispense make the other, like option A says dispense 75 as the patient requested. So then you take the doctor out of the scenario and he won't know that the patient is taking less, and dispense the 150 milligram capsules as instructed on the prescription. That is not wrong to do, but most appropriate would be to rather consult the doctor and discuss it with him that the patient wants to reduce the dose. And then option D, advise the patient to take 1 every second day, is also basically you are not dispensing the prescription in the correct way.
Thank you. So the next question is question number 5. The formulation and manufacture of an injectable solution necessitates that A, the product must not be manufactured on the same premises as the oral dosage forms. B, the product must be in sterile solution dosage form. C, the clean areas used in manufacturing procedure need not comply with the standards of cleanliness. And option D, the active ingredient must be optically active. A majority of the interns in this question chose option B.
Again, here, if we look at the question, the fact that it's an injectable solution gives you the answer. And I think it was clear to all the interns that the product must be in a sterile solution dosage form. So then you don't even have to look at all the other options, because that one is definitely true. And it was clear from the answers also that the majority of interns agreed with option B. If you didn't know that question, if you look at that question, it's not always easy to find a reference to find it. This injectable solutions would refer back to your pharmaceutics and your knowledge that should be embedded by now. Okay, sorry, next one.
Okay, so the next question, a 24-week pregnant hospitalized patient develops an unknown infection. Which antibiotic is suitable as empiric treatment? Here we really have quite a mix. A, trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole, 37 candidates chose this as correct. B, piperacillin and tazobactam, 39. Clindamycin, there were 33 interns, and kanamycin, 4.
Okay, this is a typical example of, if you look at old question papers, previous past papers, where you might have the answers, it might be that it was true at the time when that paper was written, but it's no longer. So especially this one, where the majority chose the piperacillin tazobactam, which is a suitable treatment. Maybe in 2 years from now, this is no longer seen as a suitable treatment. So important that you know your protocols and regimens as it is for current. And this is where it comes in again, where your undergraduate notes might not be of much help if it's something that changes all the time. And there again, I think of especially a lot of things changed over the past few years. So make sure that you have current information. So here, if you look at that, there's quite a spread of people that gave answers, maybe because they had old reference sources, or maybe just took a guess.
Great, thank you so much. So this really brings us to the end of this part of the presentation. I'm going to just switch back to the presentation. Are there any questions that we have regarding the general questions of the examination? Do we have any questions? If interns would like... Oh, sorry, Nat.
We do have a couple of questions. They're as a result of the calculation section, though, I think. Would you like me to go ahead?
Yes, please. So Prof. Steenekamp, I'm just checking if you're with us, if you could help us with these questions regarding calculations. Prof. Steenekamp? Natalie, maybe we should hold over the questions for Prof. Steenekamp until the end of the presentation. I think there's a question from Nikita we might be able to answer.
Yes. Will a recording of this be made available?
Okay. Pharmacy Council always puts a recording that is available for interns to have a look at. This normally is only made available after the second workshop is held, and that will be held on Thursday this week. So look out for the recording, but there normally is one that is released so that you can go through this contents again.
Okay, there's a question here from Anonymous. Sorry, I must have missed it. What is the answer to the last general question on the empiric treatments?
Okay, so this refers to this question number 6. The empiric treatment would have been a PIP-TAZ combination, and 41 interns chose this as the correct option.
Dan, we have another question from YouTube. What happens if I pass the calculations and not the theory? Will I just rewrite the theory, or will I have to rewrite both papers?
Okay, so when you fail one component of the examination, so the examination is a whole 120 questions. We divide it into 2 sections just to allow interns a bit of a break between writing the 2 sections, but it is counted as one paper. So if you fail a section, so if you fail the general section and pass the calculations, or vice versa, you fail the calculations and pass the general, you will need to rewrite both sections of the paper. So you do need to pass both sections. Remember that there's a different sub-minimum. The sub-minimum for the calculations is 60%, and then the sub-minimum for the general section is 50%. And overall, you need to get a minimum of 50% for both sections. So please keep that in mind, that you'd need to rewrite both sections of the exam.
Question from YouTube. May we use the SAMF app?
So sorry, I just want to get back to the questions. It moved. Yes. So you would be able to use the SAMF, and you would be able to use electronic versions. So you would be able to log into that app during the examination. Please remember that I think that is a paid for service. So not many interns may have access to that. The other reference that is available and is free to everyone would be EM Guidance, and you will be able to use EM Guidance during the examination as well. Remember that whatever website you are using or whatever app you are using, the information that comes from that reference material, it may always, we have to realize that they are using information that they have got from a source. So it is always your responsibility to make sure that that information is correct. And so we always recommend sometimes to go back to the original source, and that would be, for example, what the manufacturer has produced in the package information, like the PI or the PIL. So just keep that in mind in terms of sometimes textbooks as well as apps can make a mistake, and that's, that if that corresponds then to one of the answers, we would then expect that you've gone back to the original source to get that information. So just keep that in mind as well.
Is the exam online?
Yes, the examination is online, and we will be explaining the online examination as well as the conditions and everything that you need to know in the next part of the workshop.
Can Google be used as a reference source, or should it be in PDF formats?
We would suggest that you use reliable sources, and Google would not be a reliable source. If you Google the answers, remember there's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. You need to make sure that the information is current, so it is current in the actual time, so that it is applicable in 2023. That it is relevant. So a lot of information that you may Google, one, it may come from an unreliable source, but two is that it may not be relevant to the South African setting. So we would suggest that you use reliable sources, that we have explained to you that these sources would give you the best information, and we wouldn't suggest that you would Google the answers.
If I'm using my laptop to write the paper, does this mean that I may not use my cell phone to consult mobile apps, as this would be a second device?
Yes, we are going to be going through that in the second part of the presentation. You do need a cell phone, but that's part of the proctoring system, so our new invigilation system that we are going to be implementing. So you will only be able to use one device for the exam, and the second device is going to act as a second camera within the room, so you won't be able to use that as a device to get any information or search any apps.
On the SAPC website, there is a booking area for the pre-reg exam on the 1st of June 2023. Is that not the practice exam date?
So we will be going through all of the dates for the upcoming examination, so stay with us and we will be providing those dates.
Okay, Deanne, I think Prof. Steenekamp is with us. Prof?
Yes, I am. Just struggling to unmute myself.
Not a problem. We've got one calculation question here. For the first allegations question, would using the C1V1 equal C2V2 formula work to get the 25 milliliters?
No, it won't. No, it won't. Because you need to use two different strings to prepare a third one. The moment that you have three strings, you can't use C1V1. You can only use C1V1 if you have two strings applicable.
Prof, if I'm not mistaken, this is the one that they were referring to.
Yes, I'm also on that one. That's the only allegation one that I really did. Yeah. So for this one, you won't be able to do it.
Okay.
Okay. Will a screen monitor be considered as a second device, as it will only be used as an extra screen for resources connected to the registered device?
Natalie, if we can hand this over to the office, I just would like to, I would just like Ms. Malako to confirm what will be allowed in terms of a second screen. KG, do you have an answer for this? Sorry, I see Kamal's not with us.
Look, okay. In terms of the proctor, we're still gonna give out the proper layout and devices that are allowed, because we're still gonna conduct sort of a mini demonstration. So as it stands, as Deanne has mentioned, there will only be one device that will be used to write, and the second one will be a phone, which will be used to monitor any movements in the room. So if a monitor that has a, can I say, webcam that can function as, because the proctoring itself will require you to move around the phone, under the table, in the corner, on your head. So if the monitor can do that, I doubt it will, right? So it's about the usability, because a monitor is way bigger than a phone. So if compatibility and practicality, the monitor will not really be in place of a phone, because for you to go through all the checks, if one has done proctoring, you will need something that's handheld and that you can, be able to move around. You get my point, dear. Remember the whole testing. So I don't think a monitor will be too much of an admin for you as an intern if you use it, because let's say you're using a laptop and then there's a monitor which you'll be doing your checks in the corner, you'll be checks in the ear. If there are no devices in the ear, you'll be doing your checks underneath the table, you'll be doing your checks, verification checks of your ID, of your face and all that. So a monitor may not be compatible at this instance. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So the guidelines that KG had mentioned are going to be published by the office, which will give detailed information to all the interns writing the exam. And this will be one of the things that they will include.
Do you have to pass the practice exam to write the pre-reg exam?
No, you don't need to pass the practice exam. The practice exam is for two purposes. The first is that it allows you to experience the exam conditions. And by this, it means that you are able to access the website, you are able to go through the setting up of the exam, the using, like get used to the invigilation software, etc. So you don't have to pass the exam. You can fail the practice exam. We suggest that you take it very seriously and that you really use it as an opportunity to get used to the resources, and that you use it in terms of the time. Make sure that the time allocated, you're going through the questions, you're getting used to our software in terms of where to answer the questions. So we suggest that you take it seriously from a formative perspective, that you use it as an opportunity to really see what the exam would be like, so that you are well prepared when you write for when you sit for the exam later in the year.
If you fail the first pre-reg exam and sit for the second exam, will you need to rewrite the practice exam?
So the practice examination, again, guidelines are going to come through because there's a new invigilation software. All interns that are writing the exam in August would be expected to write the practice exam. They will make a decision whether the interns that are unsuccessful in August would need to then sit for the practice exam again. But the office, I'm sure, will give us information about this closer to the time. But for this upcoming exam, interns, the upcoming practice exam, all interns are expected to sit for the practice exam if they are going to be writing in August. And this includes interns that have previously tried and been unsuccessful at the examination.
The last question before our next part of the presentation. The exam booking system on the SAPC website states that it is a pre-reg exam on the 6th of June 2023 instead of a practice exam and therefore denies booking. Will this be changed in time?
Perhaps Mr. Maloka can answer this question.
I'm not sure where the 6th of June appears for anonymous, because on the website we've got the 1st of June 2023, Thursday, under the practice exam, and the exam booking will open as soon as communication is sent out. So the office has prepared that communication, I'm sure by today. All interns eligible for the practice exam, the RPs and tutors, and will receive that communication e-note from the office to say that the practice exam is officially opened. For now, you will only make a booking once it is opened, but I've got the 1st of June 2023 as reflected even on the website. So maybe if Anonymous can give me the P number so that I can check where the 6 is reflected, Natalie, but I've got the 1st of June. I can confirm that, not the 6th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So at this point in time, we're going to go back to the presentation, explain a little bit more about the day of the examination and what you can expect. So as we have been talking about the practice examination, before you're able to sit for the pre-registration examination, you would need to complete the practice examination. So there are still 2 practice examinations that will be held in 2023, one on the 1st of June, which is a Thursday, and then one on the 17th of August, which is a Thursday. The pre-registration examinations, the first opportunity to sit for the examination will be the 1st and 2nd of August. This is a Tuesday and Wednesday. And then the last sitting for this year will be 24 and 25 October. This is also a Tuesday and a Wednesday. There is always an examination that is held in March every year. Remember that majority of interns that write this examination are those that have been unsuccessful in the previous year or those that registered late the year before. So majority of the interns would not have been eligible to write for the first sitting in March this year. Okay, so for the practice examination, this examination may be written at any time, and there's no entrance criteria that apply, i.e. that anyone is able to write the practice exam. You may write the practice exam more than once. You do not need to be competent in your CPDs to write the practice examination, as well as your progress reports do not need to be submitted. All the conditions that apply to the normal examination are waived for the practice exam. There will be information that will be circulated regarding whether you need to write it a second time. And the reason that we are making interns write it a second time this year, if they have previously, is that the exam conditions, so the invigilation software has changed, and we would like for all interns to experience that before they write the upcoming exam. Another thing to note is that the practice examination, both sections of the exam are written on one day. And the reason that we have done this is that majority of interns need to take a day's leave, or they're given a day's study leave to write this examination, the practice exam. And because it doesn't count for any marks, we do both sections of the examination on one day. So you would start first with the calculations at 9 o'clock, and this will end at 11 o'clock. And then shortly after that, the general section examination will start. So just to note that the practice exam, you do write both sections, but on the same day. But for the actual examinations, we split the exam over 2 days. Okay, so let's have a look at the bookings. Firstly, you need to make sure that you are receiving communication from the South African Pharmacy Council. And this means that you need to ensure that Pharmacy Council has your updated details. They send information via SMS as well as emails. So make sure that Pharmacy Council has your latest cell phone number and as well as your email address. Another thing that you would need to update is your profile picture. If you haven't yet received any notification from Pharmacy Council, it means that Pharmacy Council does not have your correct information on hand. So make sure that if this has changed, please make sure that we have that you have updated this information on the website, and we will be showing you a little bit later where you can update this. Okay, regarding important dates, the first thing is that bookings open for the examination 6 weeks before the exam. So let's have a look at that in terms of the dates of the exam. The first exam is going to be on the 1st and 2nd of August. So this means that approximately in the middle of June, the bookings for the pre-reg examination will open. Bookings then close 4 weeks before the exam. But we do allow a period of 14 days. So there's a 14-day period for late bookings. So this is between 4 weeks and 2 weeks before the exam. You are allowed to pay a late booking fee and book for the exam if at that stage you meet the criteria to be admitted into the examination. So please note that you can only pay the late booking fee if you then meet the criteria to be allowed into that examination. And there is a fee that is involved. If you just give me 1 second, the late booking fee is 1,158 Rand. So that is the late booking fee that you will need to pay if you do not book within the first 2 weeks. Between 6 weeks and 4 weeks, you would need to pay that fee. Please note that the exam bookings then close 14 days before the examination. So 2 weeks before the examination bookings close. So no one may book within those last 2 weeks before the exam. And this applies to everyone. Okay, so in terms of the examination, I'm sure by now that you have been on the Pharmacy Council website, and on the Pharmacy Council landing page, it gives you the opportunity to click on a block that said registered persons. Under registered persons, you would then be able to click on multiple blocks. You would click on the block that says pharmacist intern. You would then move at the top ruler at the top of the page, you would move to where it says pre-registration examination, and a link to the examination will be posted there, and this normally happens the day before the examination. Okay, so the day before the examination, this would be updated on the website. Please note, however, that although this is updated, you will only be able to log onto the examination on the day of the exam. So even if you can see the link there, you are unable to access the exam early. That's the first part. And then the second part is that it doesn't, so you cannot open that link if you haven't registered for the exam. So only interns who have registered for the exam, when they enter in their P number, their ID number, and the password, will it take them through to the next page. Okay. In terms of your profile picture, the profile picture is very important. As mentioned, the pre-registration examination is an online exam, and therefore an important part of the job of the invigilator is to verify that you are the candidate writing the examination and that you are registered with the SAPC as an intern. So that's an important job that the invigilator has. The way that we are able to check if the correct person is sitting for the examination is through your profile picture. So your profile picture needs to be a color image that is taken within the last 6 months, and it needs to be of your head and shoulders. Please have a look at the picture. It doesn't have to be your best picture with your best smile and your hair nicely done. All it has to be is a picture that looks like you. So for example, if you have changed your hair color, or if you have, like for example, you've changed something, you've grown a beard, please update your picture so that we have a recent picture of you, and it makes the invigilator's job much easier on the day if they are able to see a recent picture of you. So please keep that in mind and just make sure that you have updated this. Okay, so where would you add this picture? So when you land on the page, if you go, so once you have entered in your P number, your ID number, and your password, you would then be able to click on this little arrow over here. So if you try to update your profile information, you would click on this little turquoise arrow over here. You would be able to upload a file. So you need to, one is that once you have taken that photo, you need to save that photo on your device, and then you need to upload that. Okay. Remember that there is specific information that you can change on the website. So for example, you can change your cell phone number, your email address, and your profile picture. Other information such as your title, your name, your surname, your registration, etc., you would not be able to change that information. So there's limited information that you can change on the website. And if you need to change additional information, you need to contact the Office of the Registrar. So please make sure that you have updated your profile picture so that we have a recent profile picture that looks like you. Okay, so moving on to who is eligible to write the examination, and this is very important. Remember that we align the examination with submission of CPDs. So if you're writing the examination for the first time, you must be in your 6th month, which means that you need to have completed 5 months. You need to have submitted 6 CPDs and be competent in 3 CPDs. And this is at the time of booking. So this would need to be between 6 and 4 weeks before the date of the examination. So these criteria apply. The CPD apply at booking of the examination. You need to have completed the practice exam. So the bookings for the pre-reg exam will only open after the practice examination is written. Another criteria is that your tutor needs to have submitted the first 3 progress reports. So these are really critical. We know that you can't decide on when your tutor is going to submit those progress reports. Please would you gently remind your tutor, if they haven't yet submitted those progress reports, to do it in sufficient time that allows you to book for the exam. So you need to have completed your CPDs, written the practice exam, and your tutor needs to have submitted 3 progress reports. If you're going to be writing a little bit later in the year, and this is for interns in their 9th month or more, which means that you needed to have completed a minimum of 8 months. These interns need to submit and be competent in all 6 CPDs. So you need to make sure that you have now completed 6 CPDs. You need to have written the practice examination, and your tutor must have submitted 4 progress reports. So please, once again, ensure that if you fit into one of these 2 groups, that you have reminded your tutor to submit the progress reports in time. Please note that the entrance criteria will not be changed in 2023, regardless of the CPD results. These examination criteria in order to enter into the exam are not going to change. So make sure that you are working towards. There are still dates in terms of submission of CPDs and release that would allow you the opportunity then to write the exam. So moving on to the CPD dates. So the CPD dates, the submission and release dates this year has been on a monthly basis. So if you have a look, there's a submission date each month, and then there's an SAPC release date each month. So at the moment, we are sitting at the beginning of May. You should have submitted your CPDs by the 1st of May. And if you submitted by the 1st of May, your results will be released on the 26th of May. If you're not competent in these CPDs, you will then have the opportunity to resubmit these as well as any new entries by the 2nd of June. And the results from here will be released on the 23rd of June. So keep these dates in mind. Please note that if you submit entries by the 28th of June, these will only be released by the 21st of July. And the 21st of July fits within the 2-week period prior to the examination. Therefore, interns who now meet the criteria on the 21st of July 2023 will not be permitted to book for the examination because the closing date has already passed. So please keep that in mind, that you now need to strive for the 2nd of June 2023 submission dates if you need to be competent in CPDs or if you need to submit CPDs, as you will be getting these results before the examination. So bear this in mind, please. Also, make sure that you are submitting. You do not need to wait to a specific date to submit your CPDs. Remember that these are the last dates for submission, so we always encourage you to submit as you proceed. Okay, regarding the remote examination, the remote examination can be written at your place of residence as well as your workplace. For those that are unable to have a second device, for example, or who are worried about their connection on the day, they have the opportunity to write at the South African Pharmacy Council. So please keep this in mind in terms of if you are concerned that you will not be able to connect to the exam, etc., you should please contact the Office of the Registrar and you'll be able to write on their premises. You need to confirm the venue when booking for the exam, so you need to know where you intend to write the examination and make sure that the exam venue that you have chosen is going to be conducive to writing the examination. So your workstation is going to look something like this on the day of the exam. So the first thing is that you need to start asking yourself, what device will I need? Have you got a laptop? Will you need to borrow a laptop to use on the day? Do you have a desktop, and does the desktop have a functioning camera? The second thing is that you need to think of what will I need during the exam. So Prof. Steenekamp has already told you that you are going to be needing a calculator to complete the calculation questions. He's also given you tips about your calculator and what you should keep in mind. Also make sure that you have got any paper and a pencil on hand so that you can work out those calculations. You will be needing a second device, and this is for the remote proctoring that is going to be implemented in 2023. So you will not be able to use your second device as a reference source. Okay, so the first thing, and I'm sure that you are aware of this, as many of you have written remote examinations when you were completing your Bachelor of Pharmacy degree. But the thing that is really, really important is that you find a quiet, suitable workplace. So make sure that you have found an area that is suitable, that you have got a desk that is big enough for you and your device, as well as all the reference material that you are going to need. Always make sure, and I know this is much easier said than done, but that you keep calm during the examination. When you start to panic, even when the problem is sorted out, you often are really unable to read the questions, you are unable to answer the questions, to really think, to really be able to give 100% of yourself. So try as far as possible to keep calm at all times and to answer what you can. You will be able to communicate with your remote invigilator via a chat function, and we're going to talk about routes of communication and what type of queries you can send to who and where. So keep this in mind, that it is too soon to panic. You need to remain calm at all times and use the correct communication channels. As mentioned, we expect that you will download your electronic references before the examination. Save this on your computer. Make sure that you are familiar with where you have saved these reference sources and that you are able to access them quickly during the exam. In terms of equipment, you would need a calculator, some paper, as well as a pen for the calculation section, and whatever you may think you need for the next examination, the general section of the examination. So in terms of the device and connectivity, We suggest that you would use either a laptop or a desktop. You would also need access to a smartphone. Okay, so you would need a laptop or a desktop as well as access to a mobile device. Your mobile device is going to be acting as a camera, which we need to be able to access to see the surrounding area. So please make sure that you have got access to a mobile device, and please note that that mobile device will not be used during the examination to access resources. You will need to access all of the resources through your laptop or desktop. Okay, the device must have a camera or linked to a camera with video capabilities. Often we have been told during the examination that an intern's camera is not working properly. Unfortunately, you will be disconnected from the examination if we cannot see you during the exam. Again, guidelines will be issued and that will outline all the rules of the examination, etc. But just to note that if your camera is not working, now's the time to get it fixed or to use a device with a functioning camera. In terms of connectivity, we suggest that you use a minimum of a 3G connection, and the browsers that you are going to use, please, your first option is to use Chrome, and this is the one that is best for our system. You can also use Firefox or Microsoft Edge, but we highly suggest that you use Google Chrome, and that if you can't, you would be using one of the other two browsers. So just to keep that in mind as well, is that you need to make sure that you have set up the functionality on your device in order for us to be able to access your camera. Okay, so as mentioned, on the day of the examination, you will need to log onto the website and you'll need to access the examination. You would do this from the top where you'd be able to click on registered person, and then you would be able to open the page for pharmacist interns and click on pre-registration examination. We are living in a time of load shedding, and unfortunately we are experiencing very high levels of load shedding at the moment, and we've also been told that it may get worse as we move towards winter. So there's a high possibility that there will be load shedding on the day of the examination, so you need to prepare for this. The first thing is that you need to keep calm. You need to check your load shedding schedule ahead of time and make an alternate plan. If you are going to be changing venue, please would you send an email to the office of the registrar explaining that you that you are scheduled to experience load shedding and that you would like to change your venue. This is fully acceptable, but please make sure that you have contacted us ahead of time so that we are aware. Make sure that your laptop is fully charged before the examination to ensure that if there is a problem with the power, that you'll be able to continue. If you are going to continue at a place that is going to be experiencing load shedding or a loss in electricity, make sure that you have access to an alternate Wi-Fi connection. If you are unable to find an alternate Wi-Fi connection, or if you need to be connected to a power supply, please make an alternate arrangement and find another place. At the very least, if you only find this out on the day, please notify us via the WhatsApp number. Alternatively, you can send an email before the examination if you intend to be changing venues. If you have experienced a loss in electricity during the examination, please do not panic. All work, so everything that is answered, will be saved. So if you lose connectivity, everything answered will be saved. When you log back onto the system, please note that the questions renumber because the questions, the order of the questions is randomized. So you may experience that the questions have been renumbered when you log back onto the system, but you will only be able to access the questions that you have not answered, and the order of these questions will be randomized once again. So please note that this may happen. It is okay. Please don't panic. Everything is saved during the exam. Okay, So if you lose connection, everything is saved. Remember that. Always keep this in mind. Keep calm. Check your connection again. You will need to log back onto the SAPC website and platform again. A new OTP will be sent to your cell phone. All questions answered will be saved, and you will only have access to the questions that are unanswered. If it is necessary, regarding changing of devices, I know that the office will also provide guidance in terms of what you will be able to change in terms of devices during the examination. So just keep this in mind and read the examination guidelines, which I'm sure will be issued shortly. Okay, so what is it going to look like? And this is the actual examination. So I'm talking about, for example, the exam that you're going to write on 1st and 2nd August. On 1st and 2nd August, you will log on between 8 and 9 in the morning. And this gives us enough time to sort out any problems that we may be experiencing. So for example, if you're not connecting or your OTP hasn't gone through, we'll be able to assist you during this first hour. At 9 o'clock, the examination begins. And this means that the invigilator, the remote invigilator, actually presses start on the exam. Everybody has access to the examination at the same time. Okay, the exam will be invigilated through a remote proctoring system, which will have a continuous video feed, and images will be taken throughout the exam. So please note this, that we'll be able to see everything that you are doing on the day of the examination, because we will have access to this video feed. And at 11, the examination will end. So please note the time of the exam on day 1 and what you need to be doing. After the examination ends, and remember, as the remote invigilator will start the exam, the remote invigilator will also end the exam. So the examination ends for everyone at the same time. The only difference with day 1 and day 2 of the examination is when the second part of the examination will end. Remember that because it is 80 questions, you have 2.5 hours to finish it. So the exam will end at 11:30. You will also have the opportunity, once you have finished the general section of the examination, to complete the post-examination survey. And please make sure that you do complete this post-examination survey so that we hear about your experience during the examination. Okay, so we said that there's going to be a continuous video feed and that it is going to take images from this video feed. So where you sit is very, very important. This is because if you're sitting in front of a window or in front of a door, the light that is streaming in behind you is going to make it very difficult for the remote invigilator to verify who is writing that examination. So we would suggest that you sit with your back against a wall so that it is easier to then see you. If you're unable to do this, that you would close the windows or close the blinds in the room so that the room is dark enough so that the light is not going to interfere with the video stream and with the images taken. So please make sure that you have looked at your lighting and where you're going to be writing the examination. If we are unable to see you during the examination, the invigilator will communicate with you via the chat function. Another important part is that you need to dress appropriately. So we know that you may be writing in your home, but we do expect you to be dressed, and we do expect you to be dressed in clothes. We don't mind what you wear as long as you are dressed appropriately. And this means that you are not wearing your pajamas, but you are dressed in clothes. They can be very casual clothes, but just make sure that you are wearing clothes on the day of the exam, and that all videos and images taken form part of your permanent record. So we keep records of the video streams and the images taken. So please make sure that you are dressed appropriately. There is a way that you can test the lighting, and if you are taking a selfie of yourself, you'd be able to see whether we would be able to see you in the room. So if you are switching on and turning around the camera so that you are able to see yourself, you would be able to see what we would see during the examination. Okay, so I just want to go through this as this is a demonstration in terms of how you are going to be activating or what you're going to be doing on the day of the exam and what it's going to seem like when you enter into the examination site. So remember that we said that you're going to be logging onto this. And the one way to do this is to click on the link that you'll find under the pharmacist intern page. You would need to enter in your P number, your ID number, and your password. If you think that you are going to be forgetting this, please make sure that you have checked this and that you write it down next to you so that you are able to access this information. Okay, so as you enter into the exam site, please note that it can take a little while, especially when we are starting the exam or entering into the exam as a larger group. It does sometimes take a while, so the page may hang a bit, but please bear this in mind and just make sure that you are patient. The next page is the OTP. Now remember, the OTP sends a signal from the website that has to go to the cell phone tower to then send you a password. So this takes a little bit of time. And as you can see, this is an actual recording of how long it is going to take. I then accessed the password via my email. So the password is sent to your email as well as via SMS. So keep keep these so make sure that you are able to access these sites. Okay, in terms of the declaration, you need to click on each point. And as you're clicking on each point, it means that you are agreeing to each point. So you need to make sure that you have read the examination rules. The next page is information about the exam. It's going to have the examiners and the moderators, as well as all the examination instructions. It is on this page that you will wait to start the exam. So you will be unable to start the exam until the invigilator has started the exam. So keep that in mind. If you press start the exam and nothing happens, it means that the examination hasn't started. As soon as the invigilator has started the exam, you'll be able to click on start the exam and it will take you to the next page. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look at what happens next. So going to the next video that we have. So this is once I have pressed start the exam and I'm able to access the exam. This is a typical question. You would have a question and then the question then has a drop down, has A, B, C, and D. There is a sign over here that says references that you'll be able to click on. You can also click on chat with the invigilator. You'll be able to write your message over here. And then you would be able to then you would be able to click on A, B, C, or D. And if you click on any of these, it means that you have answered the question. You are able to say, so if you chose B, but you mean to choose C, you can change it. But once you've gone next question and you have moved, so once you have selected an answer and moved to the next question, it is answered. So you cannot unanswer a question that you have already answered. You can't go back to a question that you have answered. All that you can do at this point is that you would be able to change it to A, C, or D. But once you have moved from this page, you can never come back. So the references that I was referring to was on the top right-hand corner and chat with the invigilator is at the bottom right-hand corner. And this is how it will appear. Please also note that the time is reflected in the middle of the screen, well, the top of the screen, and keep an eye on the time and make sure that you are maximizing your time. Okay, so just to go over everything so that you are aware, you need to be able to log in, which means that you need to have your P number, your ID number, and your password. You need to wait for the OTP to be sent to you. Please do not press resend OTP. If you press resend OTP and you are impatient and you click this, every time you click it, it is taking the same period of time to then retrieve that OTP and send it to you. So in the end, you'll receive something like 10 SMSs with 10 different passwords, and you won't know which one to use. So please, as soon as you log on to the OTP page, wait. Wait for one to come through. It will come through to you either via SMS or email. In terms of the declaration, you are clicking each one of these statements, and by clicking on these statements, you are agreeing to the rules and regulations of the exam. If you contravene the examination code of conduct, there will be consequences. And then the last page that you'll see is this page that says start the exam. Remember that if you click start the exam and nothing happens, it means that the examination has not been started. So you need to just wait patiently. The next one is that you'll have a question and a question followed by 4 answers. There is only one correct answer, and that you need to use your mouse to click on the correct answer, and that you won't be allowed to go back to a question once you have answered it. So as soon as you are clicking on any of these answers, you then need to answer it. You cannot unclick on an answer. You can only move it around to A, B, and D. Once the examination is complete, you will then have the post-examination code of conduct. There are 2 questions that you need to answer, so please make sure that you have answered. You need to tick on these to say that during the examination you did not contravene the code of conduct. And then lastly, as mentioned after the general section, you would then complete the post-examination survey. So we've been talking quite a bit about this examination code of conduct. And it is exactly what it says, is that you're agreeing to a set of rules and regulations, and that if you contravene those rules and regulations, there will be consequences. So the first thing is that you need to confirm that you are writing the examination in a suitable area with minimal anticipated distractions. I am completing the examination at a location and place stipulated in my booking. I've procured the minimum amount of data for the purpose of the examination, which is equivalent to 3 gigabytes per paper. I am not sitting next to or in close proximity to any other pharmacist intern completing this exam. I will not receive any form of assistance from any person while writing this examination. So this includes your parents, this would include your tutor, this would include anyone else that is assisting you. You may receive no assistance, even if it is to log into the website. You may not get any assistance for this examination. The next one deals with communication, and you are confirming that you will not communicate. This may be verbal, electronic, or in person with any other pharmacist intern, pharmacist, tutor, or registered person during the examination. I will only use reference material permitted in the pre-registration examination. I will not access any other reference material that has been prohibited, including websites. All of this information will be communicated to you in the guidelines. I will not give any assistance to any other person completing the examination. I will not share or retain the contents of the examination via electronic, printed, written, or verbal means. This includes you taking any photos of the screen or screen grabs. You may not retain any information from the examination platform. And you also are agreeing that you will inform the South African Pharmacy Council if you are aware of any pharmacist interns who have contravened the examination code of conduct. As mentioned, this is taken very seriously. There were contraventions last year to the examination code of conduct. These went before CPI. There were numerous cases that were referred to CII, and then some of them were referred to CFI. Remember that if you are referred to CFI, this means that your name is published on the South African Pharmacy Council in their annual report, and it will explain what you have been convicted of. So it is a very, very serious consequence, and we are warning you against this, that you do not contravene the examination code of conduct in any way, and that you're aware that there will be very, very serious consequences if you do contravene the examination code of conduct. And as Ms. Mokoena said earlier, she thinks that they will be stricter this year, and that there would be a possibility that you will not be allowed to work for a period of time, that you will be removed or suspended from practicing. In terms of the format of the examination, there is one question per page. There is randomization of questions. That means that my question number 1 and your question number 1 are not going to be the same. It is a timed examination that you only are allowed to answer questions during the time period. Remember that no extra time will be given to any candidates unless they have formally applied for extra time and this has been granted by the committee. No extra time will be given for a loss in connectivity. Please note that you cannot revisit any question that has been answered, and only unanswered questions may be revisited at the end of the exam. So this is very important. You can revisit unanswered questions, but as soon as you have indicated an answer on any of the questions, it will be saved. Okay, so recall that we've got a question, which is called our stem. Then we've got various options. All questions will only have 4 options, so those will be from A to D. And then you would need to select the correct answer by clicking on the little circle on the left-hand side. How do you submit the examination? Remember that as you proceed through the examination, every time you click on an answer, that answer is saved. Okay, so that's the first thing, is that you do not need to formally press submit on the examination, because as long as you're connected to the Wi-Fi, your answers will be saved. Okay, if you lose connection at any time, your answers will be saved. We are able to track at what time you answered each question, and this is recorded on the examination platform. As mentioned, you may revisit any unanswered questions at the end of the exam. If you press submit, though, you will not have any access to questions, even those that are unanswered. So if you press submit the examination, you will not be able to access any further questions. So just to keep that in mind, that the questions, that you will be able to access it as long as it is within the time of the examination, even if you lose connection, and that there is that you must be aware of what you are clicking on as you proceed through the exam. Okay, so the post-examination declaration, there are 2 statements. The first is that you have completed the examination without assistance from any person and adhered to the examination code of conduct. I understand that if I'm found to have contravened the examination code of conduct, the SAPC will implement disciplinary action against me in terms of Chapter 5 of the Pharmacy Act. This is very important. You need to click on the statement, and that you have not and will not share any copies, that you have not retained anything from the examination, and that you have not shared any information from the examination platform. And this includes verbally with any person, but that you haven't shared anything electronically, printed, or written with other persons. So please make sure that you have not contravened the examination code of conduct, and that if you are found to have contravened the examination code of conduct, there will be disciplinary action. So the first thing is that when will you receive your results? So although the examination is written online, Pharmacy Council goes through a number of steps in terms of moderation of the results of the examination. So the examination results will be released once the results have been moderated and approved by the registrar, and the results will be available online. Expect that the results will most likely be released about a month after the examination has been written. So keep that in mind, that it's not going to be soon after the examination. Part of the process is that the examination platform marks the exam, but every examination is remarked. Okay, it is remarked electronically so that we are verifying that your mark is correct. So please keep that in mind, that these processes take time, and that your results, as soon as the registrar has received the results and approved the results, they will be released. Everyone's results are released at the same time, so we do not release anyone's results earlier. You may appeal your examination results. So this means that you do not agree with the result that you receive, and this must be received by the office within 30 days after the examination results are released. Okay. Please note that we are not doing a remark of your examination. As I mentioned, every paper is remarked, and we verify that your marks are 100% correct. So we are 100% confident that the results that we are releasing are correct. So that's the first thing. So you cannot remark. You can request a review of the examination, and this means that you are reviewing the answers you selected, and this is as a learning process. So you would like to see your examination, you would like to see what you chose, and this is done as a session with the Office of the Registrar. They will be able to tell you which was the correct answer, but once again, you would not be able to retain or take any images of the questions during this review session. So a review is not a remark. You are unable to question your mark or to ask that the questions are remarked at that point in time. It is merely a learning experience where you will be able to see where you went wrong so that you don't make the same mistakes in the next examination. If you're unsuccessful in the examination, please make sure, one, you do not panic, that you would rewrite the examination at the next setting, and it is compulsory to rewrite both sections of the exam, whether you have passed one section previously or not. The second time you write the exam, please note that you need to submit and be competent in all 6 CPDs. You need to have written the practice examination, and your tutor must have submitted the relevant progress reports according to the intern's date of registration. So this may mean that you need to have submitted 4 or more progress reports, depending on when you registered. So keep this in mind. Okay, you are allowed to write the examination on 2 attempts without being charged. On your 3rd and subsequent attempt, you will be charged a fee of 2,342 Rand. So this is for the 3rd or subsequent sitting of the pre-reg exam. In terms of the evaluation of internship, and it's important that we do go through this because there are a lot of interns that have questions at the end of the year. So there are 4 components which contribute to your progression as an intern. And you need to have completed all 4. The one is that you need to have successfully completed the pre-registration examination, that you need to have submitted your CPD portfolio, that the office has received the progress reports, and that you have completed 365 days of supervised practice. Remember that 365 days of supervised practice is a minimum and not a maximum. So if you have not met these criteria within 365 days, you will need to continue your internship until you have met these criteria. So in terms of the examination, we've gone through this in length, so I'm not going to recap this, but that you need to have passed the examination and you need to have passed both sections of the examination in the same sitting. The next is the CPDs. I'm sure you're well aware that there are 6 CPDs, 1 outcome per domain, that these results are released on a monthly basis, and that we would really encourage you to resubmit all of the entries as soon as possible if they are not yet successful. Proof of competence is that you are competent in all 6 CPDs. The progress report is what differs between sectors. Community and institutional have 7 progress reports. Manufacturing has 9 progress reports, as well as the declaration of 400 hours. Pharmacist interns in academia need to submit 3 progress reports, the declaration of 400 hours, as well as achievement of a master's qualification. And I really do want to stress that this is an achievement of a master's qualification. So we expect you to submit the certificate that you have been awarded by the university or appropriate documentation from the university stating that you have achieved your degree if you haven't yet graduated with that qualification. And proof of competence for the progress reports is that you have favorable progress reports from your tutor. So once you have met all these criteria, you will then be released from internship. An important part of this is that you are released according to these, as well as the number of practical training days, and that it is an automated process. So as soon as you meet these criteria, you will be released. Okay, so keep this in mind. I know that they will be going over this again in the CSP workshop that is going to be held later in the year, as well as they will be sending out notification. So please make sure that you are aware of communication and that you attend that workshop at the end of the year. Okay, so there are a few things that we need to cover, because they have noticed that there have been interns in the past which have chosen to jump ship in terms of changing their internship placement from one place to another. And we would really like to advocate against this. The first thing that you need to ask is that, are you behaving in a professional and ethical manner? And we would suggest that unless there is a serious problem at your current place of employment, or that your circumstances have changed, that you would stay and complete your internship at that placement. Okay. Remember that the grass is not always greener on the other side. So you should think very carefully before you move pharmacies for more pay, or whether you are going to be moving pharmacies for better hours, because you do not know what is happening on the other side. So keep this in mind. And we really do suggest that you think about not only your actions that are affecting you today, but also that these actions and what impact they may be having one day when you seek employment back at the facility where you left them as an intern. So think about things in terms of your current practice, but also keep in mind what you may want to do one day. Okay, the next thing, the question that the office really receives on a regular basis is, can you locum as a post-basic pharmacist assistant? Okay. And I want to stress that a pharmacist intern, if you go onto the website and open up the scope of practice, it talks about a pharmacist intern having 2 scopes of practice. And the first one is that you have the scope of practice of a pharmacist assistant post-basic under the direct supervision of a pharmacist in a pharmacy. However, when you are completing your practical training, you have the scope of practice of a pharmacist. And this is for the purposes of education and training. And this is where you are placed, the registered facility that you are working at as an intern. Remember that even at this facility, you need to make sure that you are always working under the direct supervision of a pharmacist. So you need to refer to the scope of practice of a pharmacist intern as provided for in legislation. Pharmacist interns cannot be provided with a certificate stating that they are registered as post-basic pharmacist assistants. You receive a certificate from Pharmacy Council stating that you are registered as a pharmacist intern when you register with Council. Council cannot give you any other certificate, so they are unable to give you a certificate to say that you're registered as a post-basic, because you do not fall on the register of a pharmacist assistant post-basic. You fall within the register of pharmacist interns who have this dual scope of practice. Okay, the next part is that we often receive queries from academic pharmacists regarding their 400 hours. So, pharmacist interns have the same scope of practice regardless of their sector of registration. Okay, so this means that whether you are registered in manufacturing, whether you are registered at a community or institutional or academic premises, you all have the same scope of practice. So these 2 statements above are applicable to everyone. Academic interns completing their 400 hours may perform all the services and acts pertaining to the scope of practice of a pharmacist under the direct supervision of a pharmacist while working in a community and/or hospital pharmacy. Please keep this in mind that these 400 hours need to be at least 5 days of continuous practice. So you aren't able, part of your 400 hours that you work at night or over the weekend would not contribute to these 400 hours. These need to be 5 consecutive days in which you are working for a full day at the pharmacy. We also do not have any power over whether you would be paid for these hours or not. So the 400 hours that you are working, these may be paid hours, or they may be hours which you are not paid for. And that is up to the facility that has agreed to supervise you for these 400 hours. So please keep that in mind. Also, if an academic pharmacist intern wishes to locum after hours or over weekends or in the evenings, in this instance, they would be locuming as a post-basic pharmacist assistant, and these hours would not count towards their practical training. We often get questions about CSP, and you can look out for information regarding your community service. Remember that a community service pharmacist is registered as a pharmacist with specific conditions that they will work within the public sector. So on the Pharmacy Council website, you will be able to open up the information relating to a pharmacist, and you would then look for the category of CSP. Pharmacy Council registers community service pharmacists once they have been placed by the Department of Health. The Department of Health would like you to register on the ICSP website when they make this available. It's currently not open for you to register for 2024. You cannot register at this part of the year. They will put information and they will put out notices when it is open for you to register. So just keep that in mind, please, that you need to register for placement on the ICSP website. And once you have been placed with the Department of Health at a facility that they have agreed that you can work at for your community service, you will then be able to register as a CSP with Pharmacy Council. Okay, so I'm sure there are lots of questions. So Natalie, if we can go to the questions so that we can answer these.
Okay, our first question is from YouTube. In terms of load shedding, what if I experience load shedding while busy with the exam?
Okay, so the first thing is that if you experience load shedding during the exam, everything that you have answered is going to be saved. You need to, ahead of the exam, you needed to have looked at your load shedding schedule and made arrangements so that the device you are working on will continue and that you'll still be able to access the network so that you'll be able to access the exam. If you cannot confirm that you will be able to do this during the exam, we would suggest that you use another venue. And alternatively, if you cannot find another venue, you would be able to then write the examination at the South African Pharmacy Council offices in Arcadia, Pretoria. No extra time will be given if you lose connection. Due to whichever reason, you will not be given any extra time. The exam will close at the same time for all students, regardless if they experience load shedding or not during the exam.
Are there any CPD requirements for the practice exam?
No, there are no requirements for the practice exam. The only requirement is that you are a registered intern, and then you will be able to book. You need to book, please, for the practice exam, but there are no criteria in terms of CPDs or progress reports.
If the registered primary device fails, for an example, the computer shuts down in the middle of the exam for whatever reason, am I allowed to use another device such as a tablet or phone to complete the remaining questions?
So we need to keep in mind that your phone has got to be used for invigilation. And I know that the office will be including this information in the guideline that they're going to be publishing. So please keep this in mind and make sure that you have referred to this, but that this information will be made apparent, what devices you can use as a second device in the event that your first device has failed, if you are allowed to. Alternatively, if you are worried about that, what we suggest then is that you would come to the office in Pretoria and we will provide a device for you to use.
Since the first exam for 2023 is in August, which would be the 8th month for those who started in January 2023, does this mean we still fall under the 6 months eligibility requirements?
Okay, so if you started in, because remember it is taken from the date of registration, you wouldn't have completed 8 months. Okay, so those that were registered at the beginning of the year, so in January 2023, your eligibility then at the date of the examination would be for 6 months. KG, just please confirm if I have this correct. If they registered in January this year, they would have then completed 5 months and the 6-month rule applies.
Correct, Dr. Johnston. If they've registered respectively, the 5 months or the 8-month rule will apply depending on when they have registered. Remember, when they start in January, that we count that as the first day, and February will be counted as the 2nd month. So respectively, depending on when they have registered, the 5-month rule or the 8-month rule will apply in terms of the 6 months entry into CPD and 9 month as well. So we immediately day one when you start, that is your first day of work, and that is counted as day one, and that's your first month as well. All right. Thanks.
Why do we need alternative Wi-Fi if we use fiber? Because fiber is usually reliable as compared to the normal portable routers.
Okay, so if you use fiber would go down in load shedding unless you've got a backup. Because remember that although the fiber line stays constant, it needs to connect in your house in some way to transmit a signal. So you need to test whether your fiber works during load shedding, but most fiber, unless you've got battery backup, would not work during load shedding.
Will the second device, for example, a cell phone, need Wi-Fi as well for the camera supervision, or will the camera supervision be done on the device that will be used for the exam, for example, the laptop?
Okay, so both devices need to have a camera function and need to have a functioning camera because you are going to be monitored via both cameras. So both the second device is going to be used to put at an angle behind you as well as to look at your surrounding environment. And the front camera is going to allow us to view you front on in terms of invigilation. So both need to connect to the Wi-Fi and both need to make sure that they have a functioning camera.
Is hard copy reference material allowed?
Yes, hard copy reference material is allowed, as well as if you have PDF copies and the websites that we have recommended that you use.
Does the References tab contain references that you have to upload, or will it pull the references through the tabs and such you have opened on your device?
Okay, so the Reference tab is references that we make available to you. So this is a copy of the Martindale, it is a copy of the standard treatment guidelines, etc. What we would suggest is that during the practice exam, you open these different documents. And what I would then suggest is that you save these documents as PDFs on your device and that you'd be able to then use this to practice with these PDFs with your examination questions for the exam. So access this during the practice exam, because then you'll know what is available as reference material. During the exam, you then would have the opportunity to either use the PDF that you have downloaded, or you would be able to open up the PDF copy during the exam. It's up to you, but that reference tab will be the same for both the practice and the real exam.
Am I allowed to open my downloaded references in a third device? Because using the device that I've opened the exam with to open references on the same device will make the screen slow, as there'll be multiple screens open at the same time.
So no, you won't be able to use a third device for reference material. You will only use your mobile device for invigilation and your computer. So if you don't want to open up multiple windows on your laptop, we then would suggest that you print out those documents.
Where do we click to go back to unanswered questions?
So you don't click anywhere. As soon as it only allows you to move forward in the examination. So you would click on next question, next question, next question. The unanswered questions just add to the list of questions that you then have access to. So you would move in the same direction. There's not a separate area. Once you've completed the 40 questions, it then takes you back to the unanswered questions. So you don't have to worry about going back. You only move forward in the exam, and they will form after you have answered all the questions.
If we're supposed to use our phones as the camera but cannot use this as a reference device, how will we be able to use apps that are only available on mobile devices, such as EM Guidance?
Okay, so EM Guidance is available on websites. You don't have to use your mobile device only, so please make sure that you are aware of that. If the app is only available on your phone, you won't be able to use it during the exam. We suggest you find an alternate.
Can the device that's being used as the camera also be used as the device to access the exam?
Sorry, Nat, if you can just repeat that one.
Can the device that's being used as the camera also be used as the device to access the exam?
Yeah, so your laptop or desktop needs to have a camera. You need to also have a smartphone, which has a camera. So you need 2 cameras, and both devices need to have a camera which is functioning. So both need to. Your mobile device, you will not be able to use your mobile device for anything else during the exam. It will just be for the invigilation. You won't be able to use your phone for any other reason.
Can we use notes in hard copies like the summaries and formula sheets?
Yes, you may use copies of or your own notes that you have made. You may be able to reference these and use them. Yeah, there's no limitation in terms of that.
May we use a hard copy of our textbooks, SAMF and MIMS?
Yes, you may.
For the practice exam on the 1st of June, will there be a break between the 2 sections of the exam, or will we continue with the general questions directly after the calculation section have ended at 11?
There is going to be a short break between the 2 examinations, just long enough for you to maybe go to the bathroom and grab something to eat if you have to, but it is going to be a long morning, so we suggest that you prepare accordingly.
I don't understand the reference tab in the corner of the questions. Is it for our use to have easy access to the reference?
Yes, but there are limited references that are uploaded. So the reference tab are references that we have added to the website that you are allowed to access during the exam. So that's just to assist you. What we suggest is during the practice exam that you open up these reference sources, that you download them, and that you become familiar with these sources so that you can use them during the actual exam. You do not need to use these references. You may use your own references, but you will have access to some references if you open up this tab.
May we use an extra screen connected to our laptop?
So this was something that will be confirmed within the guideline that the office will be publishing regarding the examination, the remote examination conditions. So we have already spoken to Hutsuko about this, and I know that he's going to include it there.
Will invigilation take place for the practice exam?
Yes. So the practice exam is going to be a carbon copy. The only thing that will be different is that the actual exam will be over 2 days. The practice exam, both sections are written on 1 day, but the actual environment and the conditions and the proctoring system will be there at the practice exam for you to familiarize yourself with it, to experience the online examination conditions. So keep this in mind, but this is your opportunity to experience the exam questions, and the exam conditions.
If we were registered on the 1st of June as an intern, would we have to have passed 6 CPDs or 3 CPDs for the first exam in August?
So I'm unsure whether they mean that they registered in June 2023. If they registered in June 2023, they would not be eligible to write this upcoming exam. If they registered in June 2022, so last year, that means that they've been registered by the exam for more than 8 months, which means that they need to be competent in all 6 CPDs, and their tutor would have had to have submitted their progress reports up to date. So it depends which June they're referring to. I'm not sure if it was written there, Nat.
No, unfortunately it wasn't, Deanne. Okay, how do we connect the second device? I did not understand that part.
Okay, so this will be written in the guideline and shared with all interns prior to the practice exam. I promise you that we have done it and that it is step by step. Follow the instructions, don't panic, but there will be written guidelines, and this is why we're doing the practice exam, so that you can experience the exam conditions. So this will be shared, and it will give you a point by point what to do, but the actual instructions are on the screens that you are going to be following. So they will tell you exactly what to do, and it will be then there that you'll have the opportunity to experience that. So don't worry at this point in time, all that information will follow in due course.
Am I correct to say that the registration bookings will open around 20 June, 6 weeks before the first exam? If I'm already competent in 3 CPDs, will I still be able to register by 20 June if I submit my last CPD after the 2nd of June deadline, as all 6 will be submitted before registering and 3 are definitely competent?
Okay, so normally what is more concerning is how many you're competent in. So given that you are competent in 3 CPDs already, you need to make sure that you have submitted the outstanding CPDs before you book for the exam. Make sure also that you have submitted these the day before you're trying to book for the exam, because the website takes about a day to update sometimes. Sometimes you can't submit and then book straight away, because the CPD platform and the exam platform need to talk to each other. But yes, you are correct. You would then be able to submit your outstanding CPDs as long as you submit this before booking and it's within the booking dates. It should be fine.
Okay, Deanne, we have a clarification on an earlier question. If we were registered on the 1st of January as an intern, would we have to have passed 6 CPDs or 3 CPDs for the exam in August?
Okay, so if you registered in January, let's just go back to that page which applies here. Remember that this is at the point of booking. Okay, so if you registered in January, by the 1st of August, you have not completed 8 months. So you registered on the 1st of January, on the 1st of August, you wouldn't have completed 8 months. So the 6-month rule would apply. So if you registered on the 1st of January, you would have completed 5 months. You need to have submitted 6 CPDs and be competent in 3.
Do we have an option to either start with the calculations or the general questions?
No, you don't have an option. So the 2 sections are separate. So you don't have an option in terms of what you can answer and when. You will always write the calculation questions first. So this will be on the first day of the pre-reg exam, and in the practice exam, it will be in the first session. So this will be from 9 until 11, followed by the general section. On the pre-reg exam, this will be on day 2. In the practice exam, this will be the subsequent session, which starts roughly at 11:30 and would end at 2 o'clock. So you only have access to a specific section, and that is determined by the office. And it will always be calculations followed by general.
Are we allowed to use a second screen connected to the same device that we write the exam on to keep the resources open and not have to switch between tabs the whole time?
As mentioned, this will be confirmed by the office in the guidelines if you are permitted to use a second screen. I would suggest that you prepare at this point in time that you will be only using one screen, and that the office will confirm this later on in the guideline.
What are examples of references that are not allowed?
Okay, so for example, you are not allowed to Google answers. We suggest that you don't Google answers. There are written ones, so refer to the manual in terms of ones that are not permitted. Basically, we give you a list of what is permitted, and if it's not falling within that list, we would say that it is then not permitted.
Are we allowed to use hard copies of formulas in the calculation section?
Yes. Remember that I think Prof. Steenekamp advised that you would practice using these formulas ahead of time, and that you are familiar with them, because writing down formulas that you haven't used before, it may not be to your advantage, but you can have these on the side. There are no rules against it.
Is it possible to download a PDF copy of the previous exams, as I noticed when you open up the tab, you can only access it online?
Sorry, Natalie, is it possible to download?
A PDF copy of previous exams?
No, you may not access previous exams during the examination. And the PDF copy, the practice examination is available. Anything that is available to all interns on the website. So these are the only copies of past exams that you're allowed to access.
When we use our mobile phones for a camera, where should the camera be located? Because we are using our laptop camera.
Okay, so as mentioned, both devices need to have a camera that is working, and they'll be on simultaneously. The placement of your mobile phone will be provided in the guideline, and you'll be instructed to do so. Okay. Remember that there is a remote invigilator that will be watching you at all times. And if there's any problem, they will advise you regarding the positioning of your camera.
Okay, this appears to be our last question. If I was registered on the 13th of March, will I be eligible to write in August?
So I'm unable to do the calculation offhand. What I suggest is that the criteria is that you would have completed 5 months. So just keep this in mind. Perhaps you can contact the office with this query afterwards. KG, offhand, do you know what's the 13th of March? How many months completed would that be?
That will be in August. It will be the 6th month in August.
But by the date of the exam, would they have completed 5?
They would have completed 5 on okay, May, June, July, August.
I don't think so. I think according to my
it
calculations.
It would be August. The 5 month will be in August. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
so according to my calculations, they would have only have completed 5
Mhm.
months on the 13th of
Of
August.
August. Yeah.
And therefore they're not eligible to write because the
Yeah.
13th of August is after the exam has been written.
Yeah, which is on the 1st. Yeah. Correct.
Okay, Deanne, another question. If we studied past papers, may we use them while writing the exam in hard copy?
I don't know where they would have got past papers from, because the only papers that are available are on the website. Amor, I don't know. As far as I know, there aren't any other copies that are available.
What is that?
Amor, KG?
What is that? Is it past papers?
Yeah, whether they're allowed to access past papers or use hard copies of past papers with them during the exam.
We normally prohibit the use of past papers unless this is what we have uploaded on the website and have allowed. But if it's past papers that, I mean, I don't know whether it will be late 2000 because the exam blueprint has changed. It has changed over the years. So I don't know what it will actually not be of benefit, but we don't allow it unless it's questions that we've uploaded. As much as your examination notes, like Ms. Anna-Marie has said, they will be of no use because this is a practice-based a type of a question which is open book. So that is prohibited in terms of coming into the paper into the exam, and hence we are also going to be having the proctoring, because as much as it's an open book, we need to be honest as professionals. I think this is something that also Deanne mentioned earlier on. We need to be honest, and it's an open book. How further open can it be? So we need to use what the office has recommended. We have uploaded reference material which everybody can access. We are prohibiting the use of Google because those are reference material that are not even verified and current. You cannot verify that. In the academic world, they talk about peer review material. So use what the office would recommend, EM guidance and your standard treatment guidelines. We've also uploaded them on the website. But as for past papers, we have not, because remember, as much as it's proctoring, it's virtual invigilation, we cannot authenticate or verify those past papers if there's nothing that would relate to the current exam, So
KG?
that's the danger. Prof, yes?
May I quickly interject here?
Mm-hmm.
In any case, the old papers that are available to the students or the interns, none of those questions are used in the exams. We know what questions are in circulation. So bringing an old paper is definitely not going to benefit you in an exam. You're going to waste your time, in my opinion.
Exactly. Thanks, Prof. And like Prof said, this has changed the blueprint over the years, so it's not going to be of benefit. Thanks, Prof.
Why is security so tight if the exam is already an open book? Is it to make sure that no one is assisting the intern?
Thanks.
Okay, Deanne, over to you.
No, it's fine, KG. I'll comment after you.
Really, if okay, because the difference between an open book and a closed book. Open book would they normally test how you can apply what you've learned in practice as opposed to closed book, which test your head knowledge, your theory. So you're already receiving assistance, If I'm saying assistance, I mean in terms of you getting the reference material, you're writing it as an open book. There are still other countries that are having a closed book pre-reg exam, right? So you're already getting assistance in all manner from South African Pharmacy Council, and you really need to prove to us that you are competent to take up this profession, you know, because we are not just dealing with calculations that Prof would say, which may endanger the life of a person if it's percent point more or less, but you also need to prove to us that what you have learned, you've integrated into practice, and that you have not been assisted for you to qualify as a pharmacist. So we are trusting you with the lives of the public, and we need to be able to be sure that we are unleashing into the public a professional that is competent and that that has not been assisted in any way to achieve that competence. Remember, I think it was Anne-Marie or Diane that mentioned, I think Mojo Memokwena in the beginning, that you will be left alone as a leader in a pharmacy, and they will be expecting all these answers from you. So if you, I know we do consult, even we do consult with our reference material, but there are certain things that we need to stand as professionals and just as basic things that we need to do and know. So if you are always assisted, it may be a challenge when you really need to be your own RP that would stand for him or herself, or a pharmacist that needs to make decisions and stand for the profession. It may be a challenge, but at the end you can add more in terms of that. Thank you.
Definitely, I think you've answered it fully, KG. Is that this exam, although it is open book, we want to ensure that it is a true reflection of your work as an intern, and that you are the person answering the questions, and that you have adhered to the examination code of conduct. So this is a way that we can improve on our security measures.
Okay, this really does look like the last question. If I registered on 22 February 2023, will I be eligible to write in August?
If I can just have that date again, February?
22nd.
22nd. So yes, by the 22nd, you would have completed 5 months by the 22nd of July, and therefore you would be eligible on the day of the exam to write.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's it, Deanne. No further questions.
Thank you very much. Just before you go, interns, we are going to be placing, sorry, I just want to get to the last slide. We are going to be placing, apologies, I just need to get back to the last one. We are going to be placing the following 2 links in the chat. We would like to know if any tutors or pharmacists or RPs have attended today's session, but it is critically important that all the interns complete the survey. So these links you'll find in the chat. Please make sure that you are completing the survey. For interns, remember it is compulsory that we know who has attended the workshop, and this is recorded on your profile. So please make sure that you have completed this form. Otherwise, we won't know that you were present in today's workshop, and it would be really nice to hear from the tutors, pharmacists, and RPs. So just one word of thanks to the Office of the Registrar. These sessions take quite a lot of work and coordination, so thank you very much, and wishing all the interns the best of luck with the upcoming exam. But I'll hand over to Mr. Maloka for the last word.
Thank you, Dr. Johnston. Thank you, the Office of the Registrar, Prof. Steenekam. Thank you, Anne-Marie, the whole communication team from South African Pharmacy Council, my colleagues from Pre-Reg, Mamalaku. I know there's another meeting that's been that's also running, but thank you so much for availing yourself, and good luck to the interns. All the best with the upcoming practice examination. Look out for communication from the office. Dr. Johnston emphasized more on the proctoring, which is also a tool that is used globally these days. So please watch out for any communication from the office regarding proctoring. The upcoming workshop will be on Thursday from 6 o'clock until 9 o'clock. It's not mandatory for you to attend that session because the same information will be shared. So thank you to our presenters, our moderators, our examiners in the office. We really, really appreciate that. Have yourself a wonderful day and a good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. You're welcome to exit the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.